Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Shinigami, Millennium Captain. Chapter 81. You mean the Tsunayashiro family is eyeing the perfection technique? Based on what Lin Yu said, Ba Yunjai came to this conclusion. I think so. The Tsunayashiro family deliberately provoked a conflict between Ginjo Kugo and Jashiro Yukitaki in order to complete the genjutsu, and made him hostile to Soul Society by killing members of his organization. Saito Ya added. But just by killing members of his organization, I'm afraid it's not enough to cause Ginjo Kugo's rebellion. He can definitely ask Soul Society to verify this. Ba Yunjai still couldn't figure it out. What if other factors are added? For example, the Tsunayashiro family used the Shinigami agency certificate given by Jashiro to monitor Ginjo Kugo, making him feel that Soul Society did not trust him at all and had been monitoring him, as well as him the desire for power. They may imply or express that only the fullbringing technique can allow him to find his true self and powerful power. In this way, Ginjo Kugo will be more easily incited and tempted to go to Soul Society. Opposite paths. Lin Yu analyzed. I see, the Tsunayashiro family is really insidious. Not only did they take advantage of Ginjo Kugo's weakness, they also created various illusions and misleads to make him mistakenly believe that Soul Society was his enemy. In this way, they can successfully obtain the perfection technique without having to worry about Ginjo Kugo discovering the truth. Saito sighed. Yes, the Tsunayashiro family's plan was indeed perfect, but they didn't expect that Ginjo Kugo is not an easy person to control. He has his own ideas and goals, and I noticed this, then their conspiracy is destined to fail, Lin Yu said. But why did the Tsunayashiro family do this? Is it just for power and status? Ba Yunjai asked. Do you know who from the Tsunayashiro family is behind this matter? Lin Yu asked. Looking at Lin Yu's half-smiling expression, Ba Yunjai knew that Lin Yu must have figured out all the context of this matter. The person leading this incident is Tsunayashiro Tokunada. Is it him? Ba Yunjai had some impression of this person. Honey, do you know this person? Lin Yu became interested. Bonsai told what he knew about the situation. I don't know much about it. I just heard someone mention it when talking about 8 trigrams in Soul Society. Tsunayashiro Tokunada once married a wife, but I didn't know it later. He killed his wife again for some reason. Chun Shui also exposed the matter, but because of his noble status, everyone thought that this man had something wrong with his head and was a pervert. Quote. You only understand part of Ba Yunjai. He is a pervert, but his brain is very normal. The woman he married is called Jie Kuang. He killed Jie Kuang for the fragment of the Soul King in his body. Lin Yu took advantage of the opportunity to add some unknown knowledge to Ba Yunjai. What? Ba Yunjai and Saito were shocked when they heard this. Is this the real story? Ba Yunjai continued to ask. Is Tsunayashiro Tokunada's plan to seize the genjutsu also related to the Soul King? Yes, Tsunayashiro Tokunada was originally a member of the branch house of the Tsunayashiro family. When he was a child, he witnessed the stone tablets left by his family ancestors recording the history of the Soul Society. After learning the truth about the Soul King and the 5 nobles, he became more and more disgusted with his aristocratic status, but he did evil everywhere. He believed that the spiritual king was murdered by his family's ancestor, and in order to bring the family's evil deeds to the extreme, he decided to create his own. The new spirit king, and took full control of it, so he attacked Ginjo Kugo. Hey, having said all that, Ginjo Kugo is not a fool. Why didn't he seek confirmation from Soul Society but directly rebelled? Saito still didn't understand that Ginjo Kugo could be so easily incited. When a person is angry, it's irrational, but he should calm down after such a long time. Saito, do you think Ginjo Kugo doesn't know everything you know? Lin Yu asked Saito with a smile. Looking at Lin Yu's mean smile, Saito suddenly realized, it's not that Ginjo Kugo didn't contact Soul Society for verification, but he couldn't contact him at all. As one of the 5 nobles of the Tsunayashiro family, there is a way to disconnect him from Soul Society. That's right, Saito, you are still smart. Not only that, Ginjo Kugo himself has certain ambitions. After learning that Shinigami's agent certificate was to monitor him, and also found that Soul Society could not be contacted, combined with his former teammates after being killed by Shinigami, he immediately identified Soul Society as his enemy. It seems that the people of the Tsunayashiro family are really not ordinary guys. Their ambitions and methods are shocking. You must be careful when meeting them in the future. Saito reminded. After hearing Saito's words, both of them nodded in agreement. The madness of the Tsunayashiro family has exceeded their imagination. If they are not careful, they may be in danger. Not only the Tsunayashiro family, this matter is also promoted by Aizen. He also has the same goal. Lin Yu was silent. He knew that Aizen's existence was a threat to Seoul society. He is also very powerful, and he has the same plans and conspiracies as the Tsunayashiro family. If he couldn't be stopped in time and another spirit king appeared, even he would feel a headache. He is not yet confident enough to face an existence of the spirit king's level. However, Lin Yu had already set a trap on Lan Ran, and it was impossible for him to reach the same level this time. At the same time, the Hawako Mundo Aizen trio were discussing something. Jin, I've been feeling uncomfortable lately. I always feel like I'm being watched. You can check it out after you return to Seoul Society, Aizen said with a frown. Ichimaru Jin narrowed his eyes slightly and showed a sly smile. Oh. Really? That's really interesting. However, with your strength, who can pose a threat to you? Tosin Kanori looked at Aizen with a serious face. Captain, are those guys up to something again? Should we strike first? Aizen shook his head and said calmly, don't worry, let Yin go investigate first. Maybe it's just my misunderstanding, but we still have to stay vigilant. Ichimaru Jin nodded. Okay, I will go back and investigate as soon as possible. In the meantime, you should also be more careful. After saying that, Ichimaru Jin turned and left, leaving Aizen and Tosin to continue discussing the next plan. Lin Yu raised the corner of his mouth, showed a confident smile, and said, don't worry, Aizen's problem has been decided, he can't turn it out of my palm. The most important thing now is that we must solve Yincheng as soon as possible. Kugo's problem cannot allow him to become a threat to Seoul society. Saito didn't care about the plan between Lin Yu and Captain Yamamoto. She only focused on the actual problem at hand. She frowned and asked, then how to find Ginjo Kugo? Do you have any idea? Lin Yu already had a plan in his mind and answered calmly, this is a simple question. Just wait, someone will find him for us. Then we can go out again. Saito didn't react for a moment and asked doubtfully, you mean? The Tsunayashiro family controls the imaging hall. Tokunada must know where Ginjo Kugo is. We can only take action when he finds Ginjo Kugo. A sly light flashed in Lin Yu's eyes. I'm back. Just when Lin Yu and others were still refining their plans for Ginjo Kugo, Hiyori came back. Hearing the sound, Lin Yu turned his head and looked with a smile on his lips. Hiyori, who was full of joy, pulled a face when she came back and saw Lin Yu. Ah. Why did the captain come to the world? Lin Yu put his big hand on Hiyori's head and rubbed it. Why don't you welcome me, Hiyori? And what have you learned in this life, and how did you become an internet-addicted girl? As soon as Lin Yu finished speaking, Saito tilted his head and whistled. Lin Yu looked at Saito with some confusion. Hey, Saito, what's your reaction? Saito shrugged and said innocently, it's nothing, I just think what you said makes sense. Lin Yu shook his head helplessly and continued to say to Hiyori, look at what you are like now. You only think about playing games all day long. You don't look like Shinigami. Hiyori pouted and retorted dissatisfied. Humph, who said Shinigami can't play games? Besides, I didn't miss my work. Lin Yu sighed, forget it, I don't care about you, but you have to pay attention to the impact and don't play games all day long. Hiyori nodded, I know, Captain. Then she asked curiously, Captain, what are you doing in this world? Lin Yu smiled, of course we are dealing with business. He glanced at Hiyori and suddenly thought of something, by the way, Hiyori, I have something to ask you. Hiyori blinked, what's going on? Lin Yu hesitated for a moment, then asked, Ginjo Kugo, how much do you know? Hiyori frowned, Kugo Ginjo. That agent Shinigami, I don't know him very well. What's wrong, Captain? Why are you asking about him suddenly? Lin Yu shook his head, it's okay, just asking casually. Hiyori glanced at Lin Yu suspiciously, but did not pursue the question. At this time, Ba Yunjai on the side said with a smile, okay, stop chatting and eat quickly. Everyone got up one after another and prepared to eat. After the meal, everyone sat in the living room and rested. At this time, Saito showed a malicious smile and said to Lin Yu, let's do some digestion exercises. Lin Yu asked in confusion, what kind of digestion exercise? Saito smiled and replied, it's just a fight. Hearing this, Lin Yu quickly shook his head to express his refusal, it's better to say goodbye. This place is too small and can't be used. Saito disagreed. He glanced at Lin Yu rather proudly and explained with a smile, you don't have to worry about this. We have built a big training ground under the house to train Hiyori, don't you think so? Bayanjai. At this time, Hiyori looked confused, and she couldn't help but murmur in her heart. Didn't the crazy woman say that the captain and the chief captain are both perverts? Then why did she think of competing with the captain? Isn't this obviously asking for trouble and abuse? Thinking of this, Hiyori couldn't help but shake her head, feeling that she couldn't understand the crazy woman's thoughts at all. Is she still a masochist? Lin Yu still wanted to say something, but Saito was already walking towards the training ground. As he walked, he turned back and waved to Lin Yu, come on, Lin Yu. Lin Yu smiled helplessly and followed Saito to the training ground, field. Ba Yunjai and Hiyori also followed. They stood on the sidelines, preparing to watch the battle. Let's start. Following Ba Yunjai's order from the sidelines, Saito took the lead in attacking Lin Yu. Lin Yu ducked away and immediately struck back. The two of them went back and forth, fighting inextricably. Hiyori, who was watching from the sidelines, became more and more surprised as she watched. She originally thought that the captain would end the competition with an absolute advantage, but she did not expect that Saito, a crazy woman, could fight back and forth with the captain. Not only that, the two of them's fighting skills also amazed Hiyori. In her impression, the captain always strikes cleanly and can kill the enemy with one strike. However, judging from today's battle, that crazy woman probably never used her full strength when fighting against him. At this moment, Ba Yunjai outside the court suddenly said, Hiyori, didn't you notice? What? Hiyori asked confused. She carefully felt the spiritual pressure on Lin Yu's body again, with a shocked look on her face. How could this happen? Why has the captain's spiritual pressure become so low? From Hiyori's feelings, Lin Yu's spiritual pressure can be easily estimated. You know, in the past, in front of the captain, she could only feel a powerful and suffocating spiritual pressure, as if the surroundings were filled with endless pressure. But now, this feeling has completely disappeared. Although the captain's spiritual pressure is still strong, it no longer gives people the unfathomable and immeasurable feeling as before. It's like facing an endless ocean, and suddenly the sea turned into a small lake. Although it still has a certain size and power, compared with the vast ocean before, it has lost that feeling. A terrifying sense of boundless oppression. Bonsai said to Hiyori, Lin Yu must have limited spiritual pressure when he came to this world. He is the serious captain of the Gote 13th team. He is not a captain-level combat power. He must have limited spiritual pressure when he comes to this world. Otherwise, why do you think Saito wants to compete with Lin Yu? You think she is a fool who only enjoys fighting. Hiyori was secretly shocked, so she finally understood the true intention of Saito, this crazy woman. At the same time, she also realized the gap between herself and the captain. Watching the two men fighting fiercely on the field, Hiyori secretly made up her mind to practice harder and improve her strength. Lin Yu and Saito on the court did not notice the situation outside the court. They devoted themselves wholeheartedly to the battle, and every slash they struck contained tremendous power. Kido also danced wildly on the court, and the two sides refused to give in. It was difficult to tell the winner for a while. Both of them can be said to have reached the pinnacle of Shinigami's Slayer skills. Except for their mysterious Shunpo, the rest is a competition of spiritual pressure. As time passed, Lin Yu gradually gained the upper hand. He grabbed a flaw in Saito's body and launched a slashing attack instantly. Saito was caught off guard and was sent flying by Lin Yu. Saito, you still can't do it. Lin Yu stood up and said with a smile. Saito got up from the ground and patted the dust on his body. Haha, you are indeed a pervert. Even if you limit your spiritual pressure, I am no match. I am convinced that I lost. This discussion ended, Lin Yu and Saito nodded to each other. Saito shouted to the two people on the sidelines. Hiyori, Ba Yunjai, this is a rare opportunity, why don't you two also compete with Lin Yu? Hiyori is eager to try. She knew this was a rare learning opportunity. Hiyori took a step forward. Captain, I want to try. Lin Yu smiled and nodded, indicating that she could attack. Hiyori took a deep breath, pulled out his Zanpakuto, and then rushed towards Lin Yu. Her Shunpo has reached a new level after being trained by Saito, and ordinary captains can only be defeated. Lin Yu easily dodged sideways, then reached out to grab Hiyori's arm and threw her away. The speed is good, but not enough, Lin Yu said lightly. Hiyori got up from the ground and attacked again. This time she was more cautious and kept launching attacks to find Lin Yu's flaws. Lin Yu responded with ease, accurately blocking her attacks every time and finding her flaws. After more than a dozen moves, Hiyori was exhausted and panting, but she still refused to give up. Okay, stop, Lin Yu said, you have made great progress, but you still need to keep working hard. Hiyori curled her lips after hearing this. She knew that it was just a dream to win against the captain. Even the crazy woman couldn't beat him, let alone herself. As for the competition with Kido, Hiyori had not considered it at all. Kido was based on Reiatsu, so he would not show off his own Reiatsu in front of the captain, which would only make him more embarrassed. Saito looked at Ba Yunjai. Don't you try. I don't want to fight Lin Yu. We have a good relationship. If you want to see us compete, you can go. Hearing this, Saito rolled his eyes. Honey, let's go. After saying this, Lin Yu pulled Ba Yunjai and left the training ground. Then the two walked out of the training ground together. Hiyori and Saito followed closely, each with their own ideas in mind. The streets of Naruki City seemed particularly quiet late at night, with only the occasional passing vehicles and flashing street lights. Suddenly, a sharp scream broke the tranquility. Ginjo Kugo held his Zanpakuto and quickly rushed towards the direction of the sound. When he arrived at the scene, he saw a huge hollow attacking a child. Ginchung waved the Zanpakuto without hesitation and attacked Shu with a fierce offensive. Shu was shocked by his momentum and retreated steadily. In the end, Yincheng succeeded in killing Shu, who turned into black debris and dissipated in the air. Yincheng turned around, looked at the frightened child in front of him, and asked with concern, "Little brat, who are you? Why are you still outside alone so late? This is very dangerous." The child blinked, looked at Yincheng, and said in surprise, "Can you also see this thing?" Yincheng smiled and said, "Of course, otherwise how could I chop it down?" The child breathed a sigh of relief and introduced himself. "My name is Tsukishima Hidekuro, thank you for saving me." Ginjo Kugo looked at the child in front of him, who was not much younger than himself. "If you can see this thing, you must also be the owner of the perfection technique." Tsukishima said with some confusion, "Is this power called the complete senjutsu? It seems that you have just awakened not long ago." Ginjo Kugo nodded thoughtfully, "But don't run around alone so late in the future. It will be bad if you encounter danger." Hidekuro Tsukishima glanced at Ginjo Kugo gratefully. "I understand, thank you, big brother." "You're welcome, it's just a small effort." Ginjo Kugo patted Tsukishima Hidekuro on the shoulder. "By the way, do you want to go home? I'll take you back, it's not safe so late." "Okay, then I'll trouble you, big brother." Tsukishima Hidekuro smiled and nodded. So Ginjo Kugo walked with Tsukishima Hidekuro on the way home, and the two talked and laughed along the way. When parting, Ginjo Kugo handed Tsukishima Hidekuro a note. "This is my phone number. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, you can call me on this number." Tsukishima Hidekuro took the note and carefully put it away. "Thank you, big brother, I will keep it well." Seeing Tsukishima Hidekuro walking into the house, Ginjo Kugo turned around and left. He thought to himself, "This little guy is quite interesting, maybe we will see him again in the future." At this moment, Lin Yu, who was in Karakura town, suddenly remembered something. Ginjo Kugo should be in Naruki City, which is the headquarters of his organization. It was a miscalculation. Lin Yu said to the three of Ba Yunjai, "Saito, come with me to Naruki City immediately. You made a mistake in your judgment." Saito asked, "Why are you going to Naruki City? Aren't you just waiting for Tsunayashiro Tokunada to show up?" Lin Yu immediately explained to Saito, "I received news before that Ginjo Kugo's traces last appeared in Karakura town. It should be a smoke bomb he deliberately threw. The headquarters of his organization for completing the art is in Naruki City. He must have gone back to his hometown." Lin Yu and Saito hurried to Naruki City. At the same time, Ginjo Kugo also received a report from his subordinates and learned that a Shinigami was approaching their territory. Could they be pursuers sent by the Soul Society? Ginjo Kugo secretly guessed. He immediately prepared himself to deal with it, and a fierce battle seemed about to break out. At this time, a man with dark green hair, dressed in aristocratic clothing, wearing a Death Tyrant outfit underneath, and wearing a Zanpakuto at his waist suddenly appeared next to Ginjo Kugo. Ginjo Kugo suddenly retreated. Are you Soul Society's pursuer? You came very quickly. Tsunayashiro Tokunada looked at him with a smile. Pursuing soldiers? You were wrong. Where is Akata Ora? Ginjo Kugo's pupils shrank. How do you know her? Tsunayashiro Tokunada looked like he wanted to be beaten. It's not just her, I also know the other members of your organization. By the way, I also sent people to kill Anga Tenjing. In this case, no matter how stupid Ginjo Kugo is, he will know that he has been plotted. He yelled angrily. Why is Soul Society doing this? I asked myself that I have not violated any rules of Soul Society, why should they kill me? Companion. Tsunayashiro Tokunada seemed to enjoy this feeling of making the other party crazy, and said slowly, you were wrong again, the one who killed your companion was not the Shinigami of the Gotei 13, but the one from my Tsunayashiro family. Just Shinigami. Ginjo Kugo's eyes widened instantly. How can it be fixed? Then it's your fault that I can't contact Soul Society, including the subsequent assassination of me. Tsunayashiro Tokunada laughed triumphantly. Ha ha ha, yes, I did it all. However, all of this is just to attract you Fullbringers. Now, follow me back to Soul Society. Quote. Ginjo Kugo tightly held the Zanpakuto in his hand and gritted his teeth and said, don't even think about it. I won't let you succeed. After saying that, the spiritual pressure on his body suddenly burst out. Ginjo Kugo and Tsunayashiro Tokunada were confronting each other, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. At this moment, Lin Yu and Saito rushed to the scene. Finally found you, Ginjo Kugo. Lin Yu shouted loudly. Tsunayashiro Tokunada looked at Lin Yu and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Captain Lin Yu, why are you here? Hearing Tsunayashiro Tokunada's words, Ginjo Kugo paused. The captain of the Gotei 13. A captain-level figure was actually dispatched for me. Ginjo Kugo turned his head and continued to glare at Tsunayashiro Tokunada. You despicable villain. Stop talking nonsense. Tsunayashiro Tokunada was very surprised by Lin Yu's arrival. Shouldn't he be in Karakura town? How could he appear here? In this way, the three parties faced each other, and no one took the lead. At this time, Ginjo Kugo took the lead. Young people are always so impulsive. Lin Yu burst out with spiritual pressure and pushed him to the ground. Ginjo Kugo was unable to move on the ground. Is this a captain-level figure? He's really strong. Lin Yu turned his head and looked at Tsunayashiro Tokunada. Give me an explanation as to why you are here. Looking at Lin Yu's eyes, Tokunada took a step back involuntarily. As a member of the Tsunayashiro family, he knew Lin Yu's identity. From the moment he appeared here, Tokiden knew that today's matter was a failure. Ginjo Kugo still tried to attack him. He is really fearless if he doesn't know. Tsunayashiro Tokunada spoke cautiously. I said I came to the living world for a walk. Does Captain Lin Yu believe it? Lin Yu said slowly. Do you believe this reason? But I don't want to care about the purpose of your coming. I came to arrest Ginjo Kugo on the order of the captain. Do you want to hinder my actions, Tokunada? Tsunayashiro Tokunada swallowed his saliva. How could it be? Captain Lin Yu, please let me have a look. That's good. Lin Yu used Kido to seal Ginjo Kugo and threw him to Saito. Saito caught Ginjo Kugo who was tied up into a rice dumpling. Hey! Can't you carry it by yourself? Really? See you later, Tokunada. After saying that, Lin Yu left with Saito. After Lin Yu and the two left, Tsunayashiro Tokunada began to breathe heavily. With that kind of look, Lin Yu wanted to kill him just now. Those 5 nobles were probably worthless in that man's eyes. He was a strong man. Let's deal with Anhito Ora's affairs later. There is no chance today. After that, Nada was ready to return to Soul Society. Lin Yu and Lin Yu seemed to be gone. Who knows if they were hiding in the dark? If you do anything else, your life may be in danger. Karakura town. Ginjo Kugo was tied up and thrown into the corner of the room, as pitiful and helpless as a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. On the other side, Lin Yu, Ba Yunjai, Saito and Hiyori were feasting and enjoying the happiness brought by the food. They chatted while eating, the atmosphere was relaxed and happy, and they didn't notice Ginjo Kugo's eager eyes at all. However, at this moment, Ginjo Kugo's stomach suddenly made a loud, gurgling sound, as if in protest of his hunger. The sound was particularly clear in the quiet room and attracted everyone's attention. Lin Yu and others stopped what they were doing and looked at Ginjo Kugo, with expressions of surprise and confusion on their faces. Ginjo Kugo's face suddenly turned red, and he lowered his head in embarrassment, trying to hide his embarrassment. He cursed secretly in his heart, how could I be so unsatisfactory? While trying to control his stomach, he prayed that no one would notice anything strange about him. But obviously, his wish failed. Lin Yu raised his eyebrows, with a playful smile on his lips, and joked, "Hey, it seems our guests are hungry too. Do you want to come over and have something to eat?" As he said that, he deliberately picked up a piece of food, waved it in front of Ginjo Kugo. Ginjo Kugo's eyes widened, he stared at Lin Yu angrily, and said through gritted teeth, "You fools, you actually tied me up here. When I regain my freedom, I will not let you go." His voice was full of emotion, resentment, but could not cover up the fear deep in his heart. After all, he is just a prisoner now and has no power to resist. Ginjo Kugo, who had just been captured, remained silent no matter what Lin Yu said. Lin Yu didn't indulge him either. He just threw him into the corner and started enjoying the food. He couldn't help but be tempted. Yes, use something to stimulate it, and it will open your mouth. Ginjo Kugo finally compromised, "I want to eat ramen." Lin Yu looked at his embarrassed look, a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and said slowly, "You were so tough just now, why are you willing to speak now? Of course it's okay to eat ramen, but only if I ask whatever you say, you have to answer truthfully, otherwise, I will chop you into ramen mercilessly." Hearing such ridiculous words, Ginjo Kugo couldn't laugh at all. He widened his eyes and looked carefully at the man in front of him, the guy wearing a haori and representing the captain status of the Gotei 13. In his impression, aren't the captains all serious and solemn figures like Jashiro Yukitaki? And the man in front of him is simply a funny man. If it weren't for the powerful spirit he released when he was chasing him, even if Uranus Lousy stood in front of him, he would never believe that this guy was a captain. Lin Yukai didn't bother to pay attention to the various thoughts in Ginjo Kugo's heart at the moment. He untied the bakudo imposed on the other party, then handed him a bowl of steaming ramen and said with a smile, "Eat it, don't worry, I still respect human rights and am kinder to prisoners." After finishing, he sat back on his chair and quietly waited for Ginjo Kugo's reaction. Ginjo Kugo looked at the hot ramen in front of him, was silent for a while, and then started to eat it. After finishing the ramen, he burped happily. Seeing that Ginjo Kugo had finished eating the ramen, Lin Yu spoke, "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Lin Yu, captain of the 7th Division of the Soul Society Gotei 13. Now please tell me that you betrayed Soul Society. Reason." Ginjo Kugo showed a bitter smile. "Captain Lin Yu, what you saw before is the truth. The reason why I lost contact with Soul Society was because I was obstructed by the Shinigami of the Tsunayashiro family. There is no betrayal." His expression looked very helpless, as if he had been wronged. However, Lin Yu was obviously not satisfied with this answer. He frowned and said in a serious tone, "The obstacles of Ginjo Kugo and Tsunayashiro Tokunada were indeed a factor, but why did you break away from Soul Society's control without authorization and founded the full Senjutsu organization? How to explain this?" Faced with Lin Yu's question, Ginjo Kugo seemed a little excited. He raised his voice and said, "Since Soul Society has appointed me as the Agent Shinigami, why do you still use the agent card to monitor me? This is obviously a distrust of me." There was a trace of anger and dissatisfaction in his eyes. Hearing this, Lin Yu couldn't help laughing. He felt that Ginjo Kugo's words were extremely ridiculous. He shook his head and said sarcastically, "It's for your own good to monitor you. After this incident, you should understand how weak you are. With your meager strength, if Soul Society cannot grasp your whereabouts, I'm afraid you don't even know how you died. As for your privacy, Soul Society has no interest at all, we just don't want the power of Shinigami to leak out." After saying that, Lin Yu looked at Ginjo Kugo with disdain. Disdainful. Lin Yu's eyes were like lightning, staring closely at Ginjo Kugo, his eyes full of majesty and indifference. This invisible pressure made Ginjo Kugo feel a chill rising from his spine, as if there were countless pairs of eyes peering at him from behind. Also, you attacked Shinigami who came to investigate your situation. You can't deny this. As an agent of Shinigami, attacking Shinigami has constituted rebellion. How do you explain it? Lin Yu's voice was low and low. Severe, as if a sharp sword penetrated Ginjo Kugo's heart. Ginjo Kugo opened his mouth, but found that he could not find any reason to refute. The facts are before his eyes, he did attack the Shinigami who came to investigate him. This is an irrefutable fact, no matter how he defends it, it all seems weak. For a time, there was a tense atmosphere in the air, as if even time had frozen. Ginjo Kugo fell into silence, with a look of despair on his face. He knew that he might not be able to escape the blame this time. After a long time, Ginjo Kugo finally broke the silence, his voice trembling. Captain Lin Yu, what kind of punishment will Soul Society give me? There was a hint of fear and uneasiness in his eyes, there seems to be a lot of worry about the future. Lin Yu frowned, a trace of complicated emotions flashed in his eyes. He did not directly answer Ginjo Kugo's question. Instead, he said slowly, I was just ordered to arrest you and return you to Soul Society. As for your final crime and punishment, I don't know, and I don't want to be involved. After saying this, Lin Yu's eyes became deep. All he has to do is stick to Soul Society's stance and principles. Even facing someone like Ginjo Kugo, he could not waver in the slightest. Because only in this way can the order and dignity of Soul Society be maintained. Perhaps there is nothing wrong with Ginjo Kugo's actions from other perspectives, but from the standpoint of Soul Society, he has violated Soul Society's principles. Lin Yu is the Shinigami of Soul Society. Let's go. Come back to Soul Society with me. After saying that, Lin Yu opened the world-traveling door with his Zanpakuto. Wife, Saito and Hiyori, see you next time, I will go back first. Captain, you won't stay anymore. Before Hiyori could finish her words, Lin Yu took Ginjo Kugo and stepped into the world-crossing gate. Soul Society. Lin Yu returned to Seraiti with Ginjo Kugo. Ginjo Kugo looked at the building in front of him and sighed, is this the headquarters of Soul Society? It's really spectacular. Although Ginjo Kugo is an agent of Shinigami, this is his first time to set foot in the mysterious place of Soul Society. He was amazed by the splendor and majesty of Seraiti, as if he was in a fortress. Lin Yu took him back to the 7th team. Basemon heard Lin Yu's voice and ran out, Captain, you are back. This is Beeman, send him to the 9th division. Lin Yu glanced at Ginjo Kugo and said calmly. Benemon was a little confused, but he still nodded respectfully, yes, Captain. But, who is he? Lin Yu looked at Basemon and replied calmly, oh, he is Ginjo Kugo. The current crime is betraying Soul Society. You can just send him to the 9th team for custody first. Benemon was surprised. He never thought that there would be someone that the captain could arrest personally, let alone that he would be burdened with such a heavy crime. Basemon looked at Ginjo Kugo up and down, but didn't see anything special about this man. He didn't ask any more questions, and immediately responded, I understand, Captain. I'll send him there right now. With that, Basemon walked up to Ginjo Kugo and motioned for him to follow him. Ginjo Kugo didn't speak. He lowered his head and remained silent, seeming to be thinking about something. Benemon looked at him, didn't say anything, but turned around and left with him. Ginjo Kugo followed silently, as if he had lost his soul. Lin Yu also started to take action, and he rushed towards the 1st team building. He is going to see the captain and report to him the results of this mission. Captain, I have captured Ginjo Kugo and he has been sent to the 9th Division prison. Lin Yu stood in front of the commander and said seriously. The captain nodded slightly to express satisfaction. However, he then asked, are things going well? Lin Yu hesitated for a moment, and then replied, there was a little incident during the arrest. The captain frowned, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. Oh, he asked. Lin Yu said calmly, this matter has the shadow of the 5 nobles. When the captain heard this, his eyes flashed and his eyes became sharp. Which one specifically? He asked. Lin Yu was silent for a moment, and then said the name, Tsunayashiro Tokunada. The Tsunayashiro family. What do they want to do? As far as I know, they want to create a new spirit king. The captain's face turned gloomy. He knew the ambitions and methods of the Tsunayashiro family. How dare they try to create a new spiritual king? It's simply a fool's errand. The captain stomped his cane angrily, and the floor made a crisp sound. I will send someone to investigate this matter. The captain said firmly, we must not let their conspiracy succeed. You should also pay close attention to Tsunayashiro Tokunada, maybe you can get more information from him. Lin Yu thought for a moment, wiped his neck, and lowered his voice, do you want? The captain raised his hand and interrupted what Lin Yu was about to say, this matter can be discussed later. After all, the ancestors of the Tsunayashiro family contributed to Soul Society. Don't mention it again until they have officially betrayed Soul Society. Yes, just keep an eye on it. Just let them go like this. Lin Yu frowned, with a hint of dissatisfaction on his face. Of course not, the captain's eyes flashed sharply. I will go to room 46 to exert pressure and transfer the authority of the imaging hall controlled by the Tsunayashiro family to the Technology Development Bureau. This can be regarded as a little punishment for them. Quote. Hearing this, Lin Yu nodded slightly, which was also a good result. The captain changed the subject. What do you think about Ginjo Kugo's crime? I don't want to get too involved in this matter. It's better to follow the decision of room 46. There may be Aizen's shadow behind this person. I don't want to alert the enemy. Lin Yu nodded lightly. He understood the captain's concerns. The Tsunayashiro family is deeply rooted in the Soul Society, and if they act hastily, it may cause even greater chaos. Then I'll go back first. Lin Yu turned around and prepared to leave. Wait a minute. The captain stopped him. As for Ginjo Kugo, I will ask Shanghai to cooperate with Shunsui in the secret investigation. If he is really related to Aizen, we must not let him go. Lin Yu's eyes lit up. I understand. After Lin Yu left, the captain sat back on his chair and rubbed his temples. The actions of the Tsunayashiro family made him feel worried, and Aizen's shadow still shrouded Soul Society. The conspiracy is really exhausting, but the knife in my hand makes me happy. However, the plan has already progressed to this point, and giving up halfway will make me unwilling. In the captain's room of the 5th Division, Aizen, Ichimaru Jin and Tosen Konami gathered together again. Aizen sat behind his desk, looked at Ichimaru Jin with deep eyes, and asked, Jin, is there any progress in the matter I asked you to investigate? The corner of Ichimaru Jin's lips slightly raised, showing a fox-like smile, and said, Captain Aizen, a captain of the Gote 13 team went to the present world some time ago. I heard that he was going to capture the traitor Ginjo Kugo from Soul Society. Quote. Aizen immediately became alert after hearing this, and his tone became serious. Who is it? Ichimaru Jin narrowed his eyes and replied unhurriedly, it's Captain Lin Yu of the 7th team. Aizen frowned slightly and asked in confusion, Captain of the 7th team. As the same captain, he was only familiar with the name, but it was still unfamiliar because he had no friendship with Lin Yu. Do you have any information about him? Ichimaru Yin smiled and said, well, as far as I know, he is a very senior captain, but the specific situation is not clear because Captain Lin Yu has been staying in his captain's room or in the first team for a long time. Drinking tea with the captain. Tosen Konami interjected. Captain Aizen, should we pay more attention to this person? Aizen thought for a moment and said slowly, let's observe it first. If he poses a threat to our plan, we will make a decision. Ichimaru Jin and Tosen Konami nodded in response, knowing that Aizen's decisions were often well thought out. Then, the three began to discuss other things and continued to plan their conspiracy. At night, Ichimaru Jin appeared in the captain's room of the 7th Division. Lin Yu was surprised by Ichimaru Jin's visit. After using Zui to sense the other party and confirming that he was not affected by Aizen's hypnosis, Lin Yu spoke, Captain Ichimaru, I don't seem to be familiar with you, right? I don't know. What's the reason for you coming to our 7th Division? Ichimaru Jin still showed his iconic smile. Is this how Captain Lin Yu welcomes guests? Of course not. Is Captain Ichimaru drinking? Ichimaru Jin smiled. Then I'm welcome. After saying that, he sat at the wine table, which was moved from the Shunsui Division 8 team some time ago. Lin Yu took out a bottle of wine and poured a glass for Ichimaru Jin. Tell me, what do you want from me? Lin Yu asked directly. Ichimaru Jin picked up the wine glass and took a sip. I just came to see Captain Lin Yu and to learn about your arrest of Ginjo Kugo. Ginjo Kugo. He is in the cell of Division 9 now. What? Are you interested in him? Lin Yu's heart moved and he deliberately probed. Sure enough, he just made such a small move. Did Aizen become alert? A trace of surprise flashed in Ichimaru's silver eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. I'm just curious. I heard he is a very interesting person. Lin Yu sneered. Interesting. He is a sinner who betrayed Soul Society. Maybe he has some unspeakable reasons. Ichimaru Jin chuckled. Humph, no matter what reason he has, betraying Soul Society is an unforgivable crime. Lin Yu said with a serious face. Ichimaru Jin raised his glass. It seems that Captain Lin Yu's loyalty to Soul Society is really admirable. Lin Yu looked at him. There is no need to question my loyalty. Ichimaru Jin put down his wine glass and stood up. Thank you, Captain Lin Yu, for your hospitality. It's time for me to go. He smiled and left the 7th team captain's room. Just when Ichimaru Jin was about to step out of the captain's room, Lin Yu suddenly stopped him. Captain Ichimaru. Ichimaru Jin turned around when he heard the words, and saw Lin Yu's lips moving slowly without making any sound, but he could clearly see the shape of Lin Yu's mouth. Exactly 2 names, Aizen Sosuke, Matsumoto Rengoku. Single quote. When he saw these 2 names clearly, Ichimaru Jin's foxy face, which was always smiling, changed color instantly, and there was a hint of horror in his eyes. Both names have special meaning to him. If it were just Aizen's name, maybe he would only be a little surprised, but with the name of Matsumoto Rengoku, Ichimaru Jin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He didn't know how much the person in front of him knew, nor why he mentioned the 2 of them. Facing Ichimaru Jin's shocked expression, Lin Yu showed a smile on his face and asked softly, Captain Ichimaru seems to have remembered something terrible. Ichimaru Jin tried his best to regain his composure and said with a forced smile, that's not true. Lin Yu nodded with a smile and continued, that's the case, that's good. Captain Ichimaru, walk slowly. The door of Division 7 is always open for you, and you are welcome to come to me for a drink at any time. Ichimaru Yin took a deep look at Lin Yu, then turned and left. Looking at Ichimaru Jin's retreating back, Lin Yu raised the corners of his mouth slightly and murmured to himself, Ichimaru Jin, what choice will you make? Afterwards, Lin Yu turned around and returned to the captain's room, and started drinking alone again. Time flies, and more than 20 years have passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lin Yu sat leisurely in the captain's room tasting wine as usual. At this moment, Kuchiki Shanghai, who came from the 1st team, brought Lin Yu an amazing big melon. His little nephew Byakuya Kuchiki actually fell in love with an ordinary soul from Rukongai. Not only that, Byakuya Kuchiki even insisted on marrying this woman despite the strong opposition of his family. This news was like a bolt from the blue, shocking Yinling and Shanghe. Kuchiki Shanghai could not imagine that Byakuya Kuchiki, who had always been calm, would do such a bold and rebellious thing. He said anxiously, this matter has caused an uproar within the family. If it is not handled properly, it will have a great impact on the reputation of the Kuchiki family. Lin Yu fell into thought. Nababana and Hiyashi are in love. At this time, Rukia, Abarai Renji and the others will soon enter the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy. Seeing that Lin Yu was distracted, Shanghai took a sip of wine and asked, Master, are you listening? Ah, I'm listening, keep talking. It's not that you weren't listening at all, I've already said it. No, you're not done yet. Sometimes Shanghai is really speechless about his cheap master. Shanghai knew the character of Byakuya Kuchiki very well. Once he decided on something, it would be difficult to change it. However, the family's honor is equally important and cannot be destroyed easily. Then what's the purpose of telling me this news? Master, I want you to persuade Byakuya. Lin Yu waved his hand, stop joking, let me persuade you. How can I persuade you? All I can do is go have a drink during Byakuya and Haijin's wedding. Shanghai stood up. It seemed that this cheap master was hopeless. He also wanted him to persuade Byakuya from the perspective of an elder. It seemed that it would not be helpful at this time. In fact, Shanghai came here more to get a vaccination, so that if something happens, he can drag Lin Yu into the water. After all, He is Lin Yu's apprentice. If there is a stalemate, he can pull the tiger's skin. Deter those unreasonable old guys. Shanghai said goodbye to Lin Yu and returned to Kuchiki's house. Shanghai decided to have a good talk with Byakuya Kuchiki again. He hopes to find a solution that has the best of both worlds, which can not only protect the dignity of the Kuchiki family but also satisfy Byakuya Kuchiki's wishes. Along the way, Shanghai was thinking about how to persuade Byakuya Kuchiki to give up this relationship that was not recognized by the family. But at the same time, he also understands that the power of love is infinite, and sometimes people are willing to pay any price for it. When Shanghai returned to Kuchiki's house, Byakuya Kuchiki was standing in the courtyard in a daze. Shanghai walked up to him and asked softly, "Have you really decided?" Byakuya Kuchiki turned his head, his eyes full of determination. "I know this will bring trouble to the family, but I love her and I am willing to bear all the consequences for her." Shanghai suppressed his ultimate move. "Byakuya, have you ever thought that as an ordinary soul, Haijin's lifespan will be greatly reduced and she will die quickly if she comes to live in the Seraiti? For her, and for you, I have to forget it if you don't." Byakuya was still unmoved. "Of course I know this, and Feijun also knows it, but we really love each other, and we are willing to be together even if we only have a few years." Shanghai sighed and patted Byakuya Kuchiki on the shoulder. "I understand your feelings, but the interests of the family are also very important. If you want to combine, you need to find a balanced method that neither hurts you nor damages the family's reputation." Byakuya Kuchiki was silent for a moment, and finally nodded. "Uncle, does this agree?" In the days that followed, Shanghai worked with Byakuya Kuchiki to discuss a solution. They considered the possibilities and tried to find a way to keep Byakuya Kuchiki with his lover while preserving the family's reputation. After repeated weighing, they finally came up with a compromise, first accepting Haijin as a member of the Kuchiki family, and then letting Byakuya marry Haijin. Although this may cause some controversy, it can at least avoid direct conflict and also shows the tolerance and generosity of the Kuchiki family. Therefore, Kuchiki Shanghai found Kuchiki Ginling with this plan and stated to him the method he and Byakuya came up with after discussing it. Although there was strong opposition at first, it was finally passed after Kuchiki Hibiki's repeated persuasion. At night, Kuchiki Ginling approached Byakuya Kuchiki again, hoping to change his mind, but Byakuya Kuchiki still insisted on his decision and was unmoved. At this moment, he was a stubborn person and no one could persuade him. In the end, Byakuya Kuchiki and Haijin held a simple and solemn wedding within the family. Shanghai also pulled Lin Yu from the 7th team to Kuchiki's house and asked him to serve as a witness, which made Byakuya Kuchiki feel a little dissatisfied. Because he was not familiar with Lin Yu and felt that Lin Yu did not look like an elder. Despite this, the Kuchiki family accepted this fact with an open attitude, demonstrating their tolerance. Although the wedding was not made public, members of the Kuchiki family attended and witnessed Byakuya Kuchiki and Haijin's happy moment. However, there are still many disputes and doubts about this marriage within the family. Some people believe that Byakuya Kuchiki married Haijin out of sympathy for her rather than true love. Others are worried that Haijin will affect Byakuya Kuchiki's future. But no matter what, Byakuya Kuchiki has made his own choice and he is willing to bear all the consequences. Since everything was handled internally, the turmoil did not expand, but the Seraiti had another source of discussion. The next head of the Kuchiki family got married, and it was said that the bride was a woman from a branch of the Kuchiki family. After getting the news, Shinigami, the women of Seraiti, cried bitterly, wondering why this handsome man got married quietly. After marriage, Byakuya and Haijin lived a plain and happy life. However, their marriage was not blessed by all tribesmen, especially those conservative tribesmen. These people believe that Feijun, a woman from Rukongai, is not worthy of becoming the next wife of the family head. They were dissatisfied with Byakuya's decision and were prejudiced against Haijin. Despite this, Byakuya doesn't care about other people's opinions. He loves Haijin deeply and is willing to spend the rest of his life with her. He knew that Feijun was a gentle and kind-hearted woman, and she would support him in her own way and become his good wife. Haijin also understands that her status may bring trouble to Byakuya, but she believes that love can overcome all difficulties. She worked hard to learn the etiquette and knowledge of the nobility, hoping to better integrate into the Kuchiki family and become a qualified housewife. During this time, Byakuya and Haijin supported each other. Their feelings are getting deeper and deeper, and their trust and dependence on each other are getting stronger and stronger. Although their marriage path is not smooth, they firmly believe that as long as they have love, they can overcome all difficulties. Ahem. A soft cough came from the room, breaking the silence in the room. Byakuya Kuchiki heard the sound and quickly pushed the gate of opening and walked in. He saw his wife sitting on the bed. Her face was as pale as paper, and her eyes looked a little tired. He frowned and asked softly, "Hijin, your health has gotten worse. Did you go to Rukongai again?" Since Hijin became Byakuya Kuchiki's wife, she began to search for her long-lost sister. However, due to her frail condition, she was unable to go to Rukongai every day to search. But as soon as her health improves slightly, she will leave for Rukongai without hesitation. Unfortunately, she has never been able to find her sister's whereabouts. Facing her husband's question, Hijin shook her head slightly and apologized. "I'm sorry, Byakuya. I just wanted to look for it." Byakuya Kuchiki sighed. He didn't blame Hijin, he just asked out of concern for her body. He knew that Feijun had been thinking about her lost sister, so he did not stop her from searching for her, but at the same time he was worried that her health would deteriorate due to frequent travels. "Byakuya, I may not be able to stay with you for much longer. My body is almost reaching its limit. If I don't find my sister before I die, can you help me continue to look for her?" Feijun knew her physical condition and that time was running out. But for Byakuya, this is undoubtedly a heavy blow. They had spent so many wonderful times together, but now they were facing separation. Byakuya held her hand tightly, his eyes full of pain and helplessness. He wanted to comfort her and tell her everything would be okay, but he knew that was in vain. "Don't worry, no matter what happens, I will always be with you. If one day I am gone, I believe you will be able to survive strong," she said softly, trying to make Byakuya let go of her worries. However, Byakuya was not moved by her words. He knew that even if she left this world, his heart would always be with her. He is willing to use his life to protect her, even if it is only for the last moment. Looking at Byakuya's pained expression, she sighed softly. She knew her request was too harsh for Byakuya, but she really didn't want to give up hope of finding her sister. "Byakuya, I know this request is a bit difficult for you. But please promise me that you must help me find my sister. She is my only relative, and leaving her behind in order to survive was the most painful thing in my life." "What a pity." Byakuya was silent for a long time, and finally nodded. He knew that this was her last wish and his promise to her. No matter how much it costs, he will fulfill her wish. As time goes by, Feijun's body becomes weaker and weaker. Byakuya stays by her side every day and takes care of her daily life. Although he knew this could not change her fate, he still hoped to bring her some warmth and care. On this day, Byakuya came to Shanghai's yard and found Kuchiki Shanghai, who was dealing with family affairs. He said with a heavy face, "Uncle, Feijun's condition is getting worse and worse. I have tried every means to delay the deterioration of her spiritual body. I also sent people to look for her sister in Inazuri district. We have also searched in several neighboring districts, but so far there is no news. She has not seen her sister yet, and I don't want her to die with regrets." After Kuchiki Shanghai heard this, he sighed deeply and said slowly, "Byakuya, I have said before that Hijin is just an ordinary soul. It is fine in Rukongai. In an environment such as Seraiti, which is a spiritual place, life will only speed up her demise." Byakuya lowered his head, his eyes were empty, his fists were clenched, blood flowed from his palms, and he muttered to himself, "Is there really no other way?" Kuchiki Shanghai looked at Byakuya's pain, and couldn't bear it for a while, but he still said, "The density of spiritual power in Seraiti is much higher than that of Rukongai, and ordinary souls cannot withstand such pressure. If Hijin is still in Rukongai, maybe I can live a little longer, but now." Byakuya raised his head, his eyes full of despair and helplessness, "But I have brought her to Seraiti, can I just watch her die?" Kuchiki Shanghai shook his head helplessly, "Byakuya, you have to accept the reality. Feijun's physical condition cannot be changed. All we can do is to alleviate her pain as much as possible. As for her sister, if she is destined, she will always be found." Byakuya was silent for a long time, and finally nodded, "Thank you, uncle, I understand." After saying that, He turned and left, his back looking extremely lonely. Seeing Byakuya's depressed look, Shanghai couldn't bear it and called out to Byakuya who was leaving, "Wait a minute, Byakuya." Byakuya stopped and looked back at Shanghai, his face full of confusion. Shanghai sighed and said slowly, "Come with me to the 7th Division. Maybe that person can cure Feijun." When Byakuya heard this, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, as if he had grasped a life-saving straw. He said excitedly, "Who is it? Can he cure Feijun? As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I am willing to try. If Feijun can really be cured, I am willing to exchange everything for him." Shanghai shook his head and said softly, "Come with me first. I'm not sure whether he can cure Feijun, but this is Feijun's only chance at the moment." Byakuya nodded and quickly followed Shanghai's pace. At this moment, his heart was full of hope, and even if there was only a slim chance, he would never give up easily. Division 7. Shanghai took Byakuya to meet Lin Yu. "Isn't this the witness of Feijun and I's marriage before? He is the captain of the 7th team." The moment he saw Lin Yu, Byakuya's inner hope seemed to be shattered, and a look of distrust appeared on his face. Shanghai saw Byakuya hesitate, patted his shoulder and said, "Byakuya, Captain Lin Yu is my master. An old monster like him must have a way." After hearing what Shanghai said, Byakuya nodded, but he still had a little doubt about Lin Yu. After all, his wife's condition is too serious, and Lin Yu doesn't look like a person with superb medical skills. But now that we are here, we can only trust my uncle's judgment. Byakuya was still digesting what Shanghai said at this moment. His uncle said that this was his master, but Lin Yu looked so young and lazy, without the image of a so-called senior master at all. Lin Yu looked at Shanghai and couldn't help rolling his eyes. "Have you ever said that about master?" Shanghai didn't care at all about Lin Yu's reaction, but said seriously, "Master, I came to you to ask for something." Lin Yu interrupted Shanghai's words and said calmly, "Feijun is about to reach her limit, right?" Shanghai was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Lin Yu to understand their situation so well. However, he soon understood. They say that people become better with age, and it is not surprising that they can see through these things. Byakuya looked at Lin Yu in surprise. He didn't expect that Lin Yu could predict the future. But he couldn't help but ask, "Can you heal Feijun?" Lin Yu thought for a moment, and then said to Byakuya, "I am not sure about curing Feijun, but I still have a way to extend her life." Byakuya's face was full of excitement, and he knocked directly to Lin Yu, "Senior Lin Yu, please save my wife." Lin Yu said calmly, "I have something I need you to do." Byakuya hesitated for a second and nodded without hesitation. "As long as you can save Hyjin, I will agree to whatever you ask for." Listening to Byakuya's answer, Lin Yu almost spit out his drink. "You don't think I want to put forward any harsh conditions, do you? Shanghai, you go to the 12th Division and ask Captain Nijiri to come to my place. And you, Byakuya, go back to Kuchiki's house and bring Hyjin over. This is what I want you to do." Byakuya was stunned. He didn't expect that Lin Yu's so-called conditions were like this. Shanghai had a smile on his face. His cheap master was so unexpected. Shanghai nodded and said to Byakuya, "Byakuya, go back quickly. I'm also going to invite Captain Nirvana." After saying that, he turned around and walked out of the house, and Byakuya quickly followed. Byakuya glanced at Shanghai hesitantly, and Shanghai gave him a reassuring look. "Since my master said there is a way, there must be no problem. Don't worry." Byakuya returned to Kuchiki's house with a face of ecstasy. "Hishin, I found a way to cure you." Hearing Byakuya's excited voice, Feijun felt moved and relieved, but she still shook her head slightly. "Byakuya, thank you for running for me. But I know my physical condition, and this kind of spiritual body collapse it's irreversible. Don't waste your efforts anymore. As long as you are by my side, I am already satisfied." Byakuya held Feijun's hand tightly, with gentle eyes. "Hishin, this time my efforts were not in vain, I really found hope. Uncle Shanghai took me to find his master, who is the captain of the 7th team. He was the witness on our wedding day. He told me that he could stabilize your spirit body and stop it from disintegrating. Although it cannot completely cure it, it can at least extend your life and allow us to spend more time together." Quote. Hyjin looked at Byakuya in surprise, with tears in his eyes. "Really? But, will this bring you trouble?" Byakuya shook his head and said with a smile, "No, Hyjin. This is my choice and my responsibility. As long as I can save you, I am willing to pay any price. Hyjin was so moved that she burst into tears. She gently hugged Byakuya and felt his warm embrace. At this moment, she felt that she was the happiest woman in the world. Hyjin, I'll take you there now. After saying that, Byakuya picked up Feijun and slowly walked towards the 7th team. Although it was slower to go like this, Feijun's body could no longer withstand any stress. Captain Nirvana, I have something to ask of you. Shanghai also rushed to the Technology Development Bureau. Captain Shanghai, please ask me for something. Did the Commander-in-Chief give any instructions? Ni Shuli raised his head from the experimental product and looked at Shanghai, with a trace of doubt in his eyes. This is not, it's something about my Kuchiki family. Can Captain Ni come with me to the 7th Division? Shanghai looked at Ni Yuli and said seriously. Why do you go to the 7th Division to deal with the Kuchiki family? Nirvana frowned and asked in confusion. He really couldn't think of anything to do with the Kuchiki family's affairs in the 7th team. Shanghai explained to Ni Yuli seriously. Captain Ni, the wife of the next head of the Kuchiki family, has some physical problems. Although my master tried his best, he is still not fully sure about this aspect, so I would like to ask you to go to team assistance. Nirvana asked doubtfully. Oh, then who is your master? Shanghai replied with a smile. My master is the captain of the 7th Division, Lin Yu. Ni Yuli suddenly realized and exclaimed, yeah. I didn't expect Captain Shanghai and Captain Lin Yu to be so related. This is the first time I've heard of it. Ni Yuli secretly thought that since it was a problem that even a pervert like Lin Yu couldn't solve, I'm afraid it would be difficult for him to deal with it. But after all, the Kuchiki family's favor is quite rare, and this opportunity should not be missed. After thinking about it, Nirvana decided to go to the 7th team to find out what was going on and earn a favor along the way. At that time, just find an excuse to shirk it and say that there is nothing you can do. Then let's go, Captain Shanghai. Ni Yuli and Shanghai arrived at the 7th team soon. Captain Lin Yu, we meet again. Ni Shuli looked at Lin Yu with a smile. Captain Nirvana, please take a seat. Just as Ni Yuli was about to sit down, Lin Yu said something coldly. I wonder how Captain Ni is doing with his research on my blood. Ni Shuli subconsciously said, Captain Lin Yu only has this little blood, my research. At this point, he realized that he had been tricked by Lin Yu, and immediately shut his mouth. Lin Yu suddenly changed his expression and said coldly, Captain Ni, you promised me that you would not use my blood for research. Do you want to taste what it's like to become research material? Hearing this, Ni Yuli showed a trace of embarrassment on his face, and quickly explained, Captain Lin Yu is joking, how dare I break my promise? In fact, the blood drawn by Nirvana last time was too little, so he couldn't do much research at all. Every time he used it, he felt pain in his body, and there has been no results so far. Lin Yu's face changed again. He smiled, and said in a relaxed tone, it doesn't matter, that's not why I called you here today. It's like this, Mrs. Byakuya Kuchiki is an ordinary soul, but she is powerful under the life of Seraiti. Her spiritual power has been affecting her soul body, and now she is getting weaker and weaker. I wonder if Captain Nirvana can do anything. Niriri frowned, and was about to say that there was no way, but Lin Yu spoke first. Actually, there is no rush, let's wait until Byakuya and his wife come over to see the situation in detail. Lin Yu, Ni Shuli and Shanghai sat around the table, chatting awkwardly while drinking. Time passed by, and Byakuya finally arrived with Hyjin. Captain Lin Yu, Captain Ni, Uncle, I brought Feijun. After just a short journey, Feijun passed out again. Several people present were all captain level or above, and the spirit pressure Feijun had escaped. I couldn't bear it anymore, and my soul suddenly became a little darker. Ni Yuli walked quickly to Feijun, looked at it carefully, and then frowned. The situation is not optimistic. Her spirit body is already very weak. If not treated in time, she may not be able to survive for long. Byakuya's face became more serious. Captain Nirvana, is there really no other way? Lin Yu stepped forward quickly. Let me deal with it first, otherwise her soul will dissipate soon. Lin Yu pressed his Zanpakudo against Feijun and, protected by the stars. The power of starlight slowly entered Feijun's body, and his soul gradually stabilized. With a cry, Feijun woke up. Byakuya, am I about to die? Byakuya was immediately excited. Hijin, it's okay, it was Captain Lin Yu who saved you. Feijun said weakly. Captain Lin Yu, thank you for saving me. Lin Yu waved his hand. Stop talking, your current situation is still not optimistic. Byakuya plopped down and knelt on the ground. Thank you, Captain Lin Yu. I had always doubted whether you could save Feijun before, so I apologize to you. Lin Yu stopped his movements. Byakuya, don't be too happy. I can only temporarily restore her soul body. If she cannot have spiritual pressure, her soul body will continue to become weak. Nirvana also spoke. I can try my newly developed potion, but this is only a temporary measure and cannot be maintained for a long time. Moreover, this potion also has certain side effects. No matter what, as long as I can save Hijin, I'm willing to try. Byakuya said without hesitation. Ni Yuli nodded, took out a syringe, and injected the medicine into Feijun's body. Feijun's face gradually regained some color, and her breathing became much calmer. This is only a temporary relief. If we want to cure it completely, we need to find a better method. Ni Shuli said. Byakuya glanced at Nirvana gratefully. Thank you, Captain Nirvana. I will continue to look for other ways. Through the treatment of Lin Yu and Ni Yuli, Feijun's condition is now much better. Captain Ni, are you really unable to solve her problem? Ni Yuli spread his hands. Even Captain Lin Yu is helpless, what can I do? Lin Yu sighed. Ah. If Kazuki hadn't betrayed Soul Society, he must have been able to save Heijun. It seems that Captain Nirvana's scientific research ability is much worse than him. Hearing this, Nirvana was furious. You can say that a scientist is not good, but you can never say that his scientific research ability is not good, especially when comparing him with his mortal enemy. HMPH. Urahara Kazuki is nothing. I am responsible for this matter. There are no research instruments here. I will go back to the 12th Division to find a solution right away. After saying that, Nirvana left quickly. Everyone present except Lin Yu was confused. Nirvana agreed so easily. Our master's words so lethal. He didn't say anything at all. Shanghai didn't understand the scientist's pride at all. Seeing that Nirvana has returned, Shanghai, Byakuya and Feijun are also ready to leave. Lin Yu stopped the three people who were about to leave. Hey. Byakuya, you two don't want to leave. Feijun can't bear any trouble. You two can find an empty room in my mansion to live in. Feijun-hun, it's also convenient for me to treat when I'm weak. Byakuya and Feijun thanked Lin Yu and settled in the mansion. During this period, what Lin Yu did every day was to use the power of the stars to maintain Feijun's spiritual body. Seeing Byakuya and his wife showing off their affection every day, Lin Yu finally understood Saito's mood. Has Nirvana still not found a solution? It's really annoying. These days go by like a year. On the other side, after Nirvana returned to the Technology Development Bureau, he immediately summoned his researchers and began to study methods to treat Feijun. After several days of hard work, Nirvana finally had some clues. The reason why Hijin's soul is so fragile is that she is not a Shinigami, but an ordinary soul. To make her soul stronger, she must be given spiritual pressure. However, it is not easy to directly give spiritual pressure. Nirvana needs to find a special substance as a medium to transmit spiritual pressure. After reading a lot of information and conducting countless experiments, Nirvana finally found the right substance. He excitedly came to Lin Yu's mansion again with his research results. Seeing the smile on Ni Shuli's face, Lin Yu knew that it was done. Captain Ni, have you found a solution to Feijun's problem? Lin Yu asked tentatively. Of course, Nirvana smiled proudly. It's just a matter of the spirit body, how can it stump a great scientist like me? Hearing this, Lin Yu felt happy, but still pretended to be skeptical and said, is it true? Captain Ni is so sure. Humph, Captain Lin Yu, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. You are questioning my ability. Ni Yuli glanced at Lin Yu disdainfully. Don't worry, I won't joke about this kind of thing. Quote. That's good, that's good. Lin Yu breathed a sigh of relief. But, Captain Ni, can you tell me the specific method? Ni Shuli smiled mysteriously and said, this is my exclusive secret recipe, I can't tell you. Lin Yu shook his head helplessly, thinking that Nirvana had a really weird temper. But no matter what, as long as Feijun can be saved. At this time, Lin Yu suddenly thought of a question and asked curiously, Captain Nirvana, Urahara Kazuki shouldn't have such an achievement, right? After hearing this, Niruri showed a proud look on his face and said, that's nature. Who does Urahara Kazuki mean? I am the most powerful scientist. Lin Yu quickly echoed. Yes, yes, Captain Nirvana is the best. Lin Yu's words made Nirvana quite satisfied. He thought to himself, Urahara Kazuki is nothing, I am the number one in the scientific world. The two flattered each other and soon arrived at Byakuya and Hyjin's courtyard. When Byakuya saw Lin Yu and Niruri arriving together, there was no expression of frustration on their faces, and he knew in his heart that Feijun's problem must have been solved. He rushed into the room excitedly and shouted, Feijun, Captain Lin Yu and Captain Ni are here. Your spiritual problem can be solved. Hearing the good news, Feijun couldn't help crying with joy, and tears fell down her cheeks. She threw herself into Byakuya's arms, choked and speechless. Byakuya hugged Hyjin tightly, his eyes full of joy and comfort. He gently stroked Feijun's back and said softly, stop crying, we should be happy. The two hugged each other, feeling each other's warmth and joy. Their feelings at this moment cannot be expressed in words. Ahem. Lin Yu and Ni Yuli looked at this warm scene and couldn't help but cough twice as a reminder. Byakuya and Hyjin heard the sound and let go of each other with some embarrassment. Their faces were filled with happy smiles, and their eyes were full of love for each other. Lin Yu smiled and said to Byakuya and Feijun, okay, you two, stop showing off your affection. Let Captain Ni check Feijun's body quickly. Byakuya nodded, pulled Hyjin to Niruri, and looked at him expectantly. Nirvana took out various tools from the bag she carried with her and began to carefully check Feijun's physical condition. While checking, he said, it seems that Captain Lin Yu's ability is very effective. Her spiritual condition has not deteriorated too much during this period. After hearing this, Byakuya said gratefully, Captain Lin Yu blesses Feijun with the power of the stars every day, so her condition is not bad. After Nirvana was busy for a while, she finally completed the examination of Feijun. He packed up his tools and said to Byakuya, at present, it seems that the state of Hyjin's spiritual body has stabilized. You should know that if you want to completely solve this problem, you must let her have her own spiritual pressure and become Shinigami. Quote, Captain Nirvana, I know what you are saying, but there is nothing I can do to make Hyjin become a Shinigami. At this time, Ni Shuli took out a small bottle from his arms. He carefully opened the bottle cap and poured out a small pill that was only the size of a soybean. Nirvana raised the small pill and said proudly, look, this is what I have researched in the past few days. It can give ordinary souls spiritual pressure and give them the power to become Shinigami. Byakuya stared closely at the small pill in Niruri's hand, his eyes shining with anticipation and excitement, as if he had already seen Hyjin's recovery after taking the small pill. He couldn't wait to feed Feijun the small pill. However, Nirvana suddenly looked at Lin Yu, and then said, but, this thing still needs the help of Captain Lin Yu. Lin Yu pointed at himself, with a trace of doubt on his face, and asked, me? Nirvana nodded and explained, yes, it's you. Although the spiritual pressure here is very gentle, it is only relative to us Shinigami. Ordinary souls cannot withstand such spiritual pressure. Therefore, if we can get the help of Captain Lin Yu and pour the power of the stars into this ball, Feijun can successfully withstand the spiritual pressure. Lin Yu nodded thoughtfully, then stretched out his hand and took the small pill handed over by Ni Yuli. He concentrated, mobilized the power of the stars in his Zanpakuto, and slowly poured the power of the stars into the small pill. With the injection of star power, the small pill began to emit a faint light, like a bright pearl. Okay, let's feed it to Feijun. Byakuya tremblingly took the small pill and fed it into Feijun's mouth. After Feijun swallowed the small pill with difficulty, the effect was immediately apparent. A trace of spiritual pressure began to be generated in her body, but at the same time her expression began to become painful. Seeing this, Lin Yu on the side quickly mobilized the power of the stars again and continuously fed it into Feijun's body to relieve her pain. As time went by, the spiritual pressure in Feijun's body gradually increased. 20 etc., 19 and so on, 18 and so on. Finally, it stopped when the spiritual pressure soared to level 15. Looking at this scene, Ni Shuli couldn't help but curled his lips, feeling a little dissatisfied. the things that were studied for the first time, coupled with Lin Yu's power of stars, can only allow ordinary souls to have 15 levels. The spiritual pressure is really disappointing. Originally, I thought it could reach the level of 12th level. Hearing this, Byakuya seemed very excited. He quickly said, "It is enough to have spiritual pressure and become a Shinigami, and it is also a 15th level spiritual pressure. This is really surprising. Thank you very much, Captain Nirvana and Captain Lin Yu's help. Okay, the matter has been taken care of, so I'll go back first. I still have a lot of experiments to do." Ni Shuli didn't want to hear those words of thanks, so he turned around and left. Byakuya and Hyjin hugged each other excitedly. "Hyjin, now we can finally live together forever and ever." "Go away. You two go back to Nawai. I can't bear it anymore." Lin Yu didn't like to see Byakuya and Feijun now, and wished they could disappear from his sight. "Bianjai, come back quickly. Your husband has been spoiled." Woo. Chapter 91. The long-term peaceful life made Lin Yu feel a little boring, so he decided to go to Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy to find out. After all, there are many familiar faces there who are learning to grow. Today, Rukia, Abarai Renji, Hinamori Momo and Kira have all successfully entered the Spiritual Arts Academy. Especially Rukia, she is an important character throughout the entire Shinigami storyline. If he didn't meet these people with his own eyes, Lin Yu would always feel itchy in his heart and find it difficult to let go. He also knew the decision would come with some risks. Perhaps, this move will arouse Aizen's vigilance, thus attracting Aizen's attention prematurely. But facing the strong curiosity in his heart, Lin Yu was still ready to take a look. Lin Yu shouted loudly toward the door, "Beeman, accompany me to the Shino Spiritual Arts Academy." However, after a long time, there was still no response. Lin Yu couldn't help frowning, and when he was about to shout again, a low and deep voice suddenly came. "Captain, have you forgotten? Vice Captain Tetsuziman has chosen to retire a few days ago. And, so far, you have not appointed a new vice captain." The person who spoke was Tetsuziman. Lin Yu suddenly realized it, patted his forehead, and said, "Oh, yes, it's Tetsuziman. I didn't remember it for a moment. I used to always ask Tetsuziman to handle various matters, so I didn't react at all. Come here." He looked up at the sky, with a trace of confusion and thought in his eyes. "Do you think people will feel more and more lonely as they live longer?" After Tetsuziman was silent for a moment, he slowly said, "Maybe, but this is also one of the necessary stages in life. I am still young, so I may not understand this feeling." Lin Yu nodded and continued to stare at the sky, as if deep in thought. After a moment of silence, Lin Yu turned his head and said, "Tetsuziman, come with me to the Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. I heard that there are some good seedlings this year, let's go and take a look." Tetsuziman wore a pair of sunglasses so that no one could see his eyes. He nodded and said in a very manly tone, "Since the captain has spoken, of course I am happy to accompany you." The two of them embarked on the road to Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy together. Along the way, Lin Yu and Tetsuziman chatted about the history and development of Soul Society. Soon after, they arrived at Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. The college was very lively, with students busily shuttling between classrooms. The two of them walked around the campus and felt the strong learning atmosphere here. While wandering around, Lin Yu came to a large staircase classroom and suddenly heard a noise coming from inside. He curiously walked in to check and found a group of students gathered together to form a circle. This sight made Lin Yu very interesting, and he decided to take Tetsuziman and walk in together to see what was going on. When Lin Yu and the two approached the crowd, he immediately regretted that he had nothing to do with joining in the fun. This made him feel uncomfortable. It turned out that the person surrounded by the students was the person he least wanted to see at the moment, Aizen Sosuke. In addition, there are some familiar faces appearing around, including Hisagi Shuhei, Abarai Renji, Kira Iga and Hinamori Momo, etc. Lin Yu knew all these people, but at this time he felt a little embarrassed and helpless. Hisagi Shuhei has become a 6th reincarnation and successfully joined the Gotei 13. The obvious, 69, tattoo on his face makes him instantly recognizable. Abarai Renji has striking red hair and a carefree personality. Kira Iga always has an annoying expression, which reminds Lin Yu of his former friend Nobusuna. As for Hinamori Momo, she is petite, has a pair of big brown eyes, and her cute appearance is very lovable. There is also the most conspicuous Lucia. Her appearance is so similar to that of Hyjin. The two are just different in temperament and eyes. I don't know if they are twins. At the same time, Aizen was chatting with the students, but his eyes unconsciously glanced towards the entrance. When he saw Lin Yu, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing an imperceptible smile. Aizen gently pushed up the pair of reflective glasses and thought to himself, I finally waited for this opportunity. I have always wanted to test the captain of the 7th team, but I didn't expect that he would take the initiative to show up today. The originally lively atmosphere suddenly became quiet, and the students surrounding Aizen were surprised. They looked at Captain Aizen in confusion, wondering why he was suddenly silent and staring in the direction behind them. Driven by curiosity, the students turned around and looked along Aizen's line of sight, only to see a man also wearing the captain's howry walking slowly. This sight immediately caused a commotion, and some people whispered, another captain has come to the academy. I wonder which team captain he is. Others also began to guess, trying to find clues from the other party's clothing and temperament, but it is still impossible to determine who the visitor is. Lin Yu smiled helplessly, thinking that now he could only bite the bullet and say hello to Aizen. So he smiled and said, it turns out to be Captain Aizen. I thought who was so popular. Aizen smiled and responded, nice to see you here, Captain Lin Yu. Then he turned to face the students and introduced, this is Captain Lin Yu of the 7th team, he is a very powerful captain. Students must learn from Captain Lin Yu in the future. Hearing Aizen's words, the girls among the students became excited and commented one after another, wow, Captain Aizen is so gentle. They were attracted by Aizen's charming smile, and each one of them turned into a nymphomaniac. Aizen continued to ask, I wonder if Captain Lin Yu came to the Spiritual Arts Academy today. Is there anything that needs to be done? Lin Yu replied, I just heard that there are a few good prospects among this class of students, so I came here to have a look. But, Captain Aizen, why do you appear here? Aizen smiled and explained, it seems that Captain Lin Yu doesn't know yet. I am actually a guest calligraphy teacher at the Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. As long as I have time, I will come to the Spiritual Arts Academy to teach calligraphy to the students. Ha ha, Lin Yu laughed twice, so it was like this. In this case, I won't disturb Captain Aizen's teaching. You go on, I'll walk around again. Just as Lin Yu was about to leave, Aizen stopped him and said, Captain Lin Yu wants to see the good talents of this year. There is no need to look around, they are all here. Let me introduce them to you. Then he introduced Lucia and the others to Lin Yu one by one. Lin Yu and Lucia exchanged pleasantries and prepared to leave this place of right and wrong with Tetsuziman. Aizen made trouble again. Captain Lin Yu, why don't you stay a little longer? He stirred up the students' emotions again. Captain Lin Yu finally came to the Spiritual Arts Academy. How about we let him introduce his Zanpakuto? At this time, Abarai Renji, the brainless leader, started to boo, it's an honor to meet Captain Lin Yu. Please introduce your Zanpakuto to us so that we can learn more about it. Please, I'm very grateful. After that, he gave a big gift. The students all burst into loud cheers and followed Renji's example and bowed, please. Captain Lin Yu. Lin Yu was now in a difficult situation, so he had no choice but to bite the bullet and walk to the podium. Students, my Zanpakuto is of the star system and is auxiliary Zanpakuto. Lin Yu pulled out his Zanpakuto. The stars protect Wei. As the liberation language was spoken, Lin Yu's Zanpakuto turned into an ancient Chinese sword, with the light of stars emitting around the sword body, which looked very dazzling. Lin Yu briefly demonstrated Zwei's abilities, and the audience burst into warm applause. He took the opportunity to step down and planned to run away quickly, but was stopped by Aizen. Captain Lin Yu, this is a rare occasion, why not guide the students in their Kido practice? Aizen said with a smile. Lin Yu sighed secretly in his heart, this guy is really pushing his limits. Just when he was hesitating, Abarai took the lead and shouted again, Captain Lin Yu, please give me some advice. Other students also followed suit. Lin Yu had no choice but to agree. He looked at the students, pointed out some problems they had with using Kido, and gave some suggestions. In fact, when Lin Yu liberated the Zanpakuto, he discovered that the reason why Aizen wanted to see his liberation was to test his spiritual pressure. Lin Yu's spiritual pressure could not be detected at all due to his immortal power. Most people just think that he may have practiced a technique that can condense spiritual pressure, and they will not think that his spiritual pressure is too terrifying for others to detect. Therefore, as long as Lin Yu does not take the initiative to burst out spiritual pressure, most people will only regard him as an ordinary captain. Aizen didn't realize it completely when Lin Yu was liberated, so he encouraged Renji, an idiot, to let Lin Yu show Kido. At this time, Lin Yu had already reacted and deliberately revealed a trace of his spiritual pressure fluctuations, no more and no less. Aizen noticed that the strength of his spiritual pressure was comparable to first-class spiritual pressure. A mysterious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth again. This result was decided by Lin Yu after careful consideration. As a veteran captain, his spiritual pressure cannot be too low, and too high is not appropriate. The reluctant first-class spiritual pressure will not make Aizen suspicious, and at the same time, it will not make Aizen suspicious. Ran pays too much attention to herself. If his spiritual pressure is lower than the first level, his suspicious character will definitely pay too much attention to his words and deeds. Is he deliberately hiding something? Lin Yu thought that it was finally over and said goodbye again, but Aizen didn't give up. Since Captain Lin Yu has shown his Zanpakuto, let me also show you my Zanpakuto. Aizen chuckled and took off the sword from his waist, the blade flashing with cold light. Kyoka Suigetsu, he muttered softly, then thrust the knife into the ground. The blade instantly released a strange light, covering the entire classroom. The students were amazed and shocked by this beautiful and mysterious power. My Zanpakuto is of the flowing water type. It can disrupt the enemy through random reflections of mist and water, causing them to kill each other. At the moment Kyoka Suigetsu was cast, Lin Yu communicated with Zui and used fairy power to form a small field outside his body to avoid being affected by hypnosis. This level of power Aizen is still not aware of, so he can rest assured cast. After the display, Aizen smiled and said to Lin Yu, "How about it, Captain Lin Yu, are you interested in competing with me?" Lin Yu's heart tightened, and he understood that this was Aizen's test. But he doesn't want to take action today. The more he shows, the more flaws he will have and the easier it will be exposed. Captain Aizen, let's fight another day. We have other important matters today. Lin Yu replied calmly. There was a hint of imperceptible disappointment in Aizen's eyes, but he quickly returned to his smile. Then I look forward to my next communication with Captain Lin Yu. He put away his Zanpakuto and said goodbye to the students. Lin Yu and Tetsuziman also left the classroom, secretly glad that they could escape smoothly. He decided to be more careful with Aizen in the future. This seemingly gentle man actually hid a dangerous aura. After leaving the classroom, Lin Yu pulled Tetsuziman and said, "Go to Kuchiki's house to find Byakuya Kuchiki and ask him to come to the Shino Spiritual Arts Academy. Just say that I have something to ask him to come over." After hearing this, Tetsuziman nodded immediately and left in a hurry. At the same time, Aizen also came back, hiding in the dark and quietly observing Lin Yu. However, Lin Yu had already noticed his presence, but did not react at all and was still standing in the corridor. In fact, Lin Yu asked Tetsuziman to do things just to make Aizen sure that what he said just now that he had something to do was not an excuse, but that there was indeed something that needed to be dealt with. After all, Lin Yu's performance today made Aizen realize that the captain of the 7th team didn't like him very much and kept avoiding chatting with him, so he would definitely be suspicious. So the best way is to let Aizen see Tetsuziman really going to do something. In this way, Aizen will think that Lin Yu does have something to do, and relax his vigilance. As time passed by, Tetsuziman finally hurried back with Byakuya Kuchiki looking excited. Aizen, who was hiding in the dark, looked at Byakuya Kuchiki in surprise and muttered to himself, "Why is Byakuya Kuchiki here? Is there something going on between them?" There was unconcealable joy on Byakuya's face. "Captain Lin Yu, did you really see Feijun's sister? Are you sure you saw it correctly?" Lin Yu nodded. "I'm sure that her face is consistent with Feijun. Without looking carefully, I thought she was Feijun. I even chatted with her for a few words. She is now in the Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. Do you want to go take a look?" Byakuya Kuchiki's eyes flashed with excitement, and he nodded immediately. "I'm going to have a look." "Where is she?" Lin Yu pointed in the direction of the classroom. She is right there. She was with Captain Aizen just now. Byakuya Kuchiki frowned. Captain Aizen. Why is he here too? Lin Yu shrugged. I don't know, he was here when I came. However, he seems to be a guest calligraphy teacher at Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. Byakuya Kuchiki snorted. This guy. Ignore him, I'm going to see Hyjin's sister first. With that, he walked quickly towards the classroom. Lin Yu looked at Byakuya Kuchiki's back and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He believed that the appearance of Byakuya Kuchiki would allow Aizen to temporarily stop testing him. At least, now he can temporarily get rid of Aizen's entanglement. Lin Yu and Byakuya returned to the large lecture hall just now, and found Rukia, who was still chatting with Renji and others. Lucia, come here. Lin Yu waved to Lucia. Captain Lin Yu, why are you back again? Is there anything else? Lucia asked doubtfully. Byakuya next to Lin Yu trembled with excitement. It looks like. It's so similar. It's so similar. It's almost like he was carved out of the same mold as Hyjin. Lucia looked at the man next to Lin Yu. A Shinigami wearing aristocratic clothes looked at her with tears in her eyes, making her confused. Who is this man? How excited he was when he saw him, even a little noble etiquette. No. Abarai Renji on the side also became alert, looked at Byakuya, and then at Rukia. Is this handsome Shinigami here to steal his wife? He is still a nobleman, so he has no qualifications to compete. Lucia walked over, and Byakuya couldn't wait to pull her aside. His eyes were full of excitement and anticipation, and he asked eagerly, Are you Lucia? Do you have a sister? Lin Yu's quick eyesight and quick hands set up a layer of transparent barriers in time to cover the two of them, preventing their conversation from being heard by Abarai and others. Of course, these barriers have no effect on Aizen, who is listening in the corner. Lucia was a little confused, but she nodded and replied, I can't remember clearly, I think I have a sister. Byakuya continued to ask, Then were you born in Inazuri district? Lucia thought for a while, then nodded affirmatively and said, That's true. When I was born in Seoul Society, I was in the Inazuri district. After wandering for a while, I met Abarai and the others, and then we became together. I applied for Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. Byakuya murmured to himself, That's right. No wonder Hyjin and I searched the Inazuri district countless times, and even searched several surrounding districts, but we couldn't find you. Mr. Shinigami, is it related to a girl named Hyjin that you are looking for me? Byakuya spoke slowly, I come from the Kuchiki family in Seoul Society. My name is Byakuya Kuchiki. Do you know about the Kuchiki family? Rukia nodded. The Feijun I am talking about is my wife. She is your sister. When Feijun and you were first born in Rukongai, Feijun chose to abandon you in order to survive. Later, she regretted it very much and searched for you every day. There are traces of you till now. Aizen heard this and confirmed that Lin Yu really had something important to do. It seemed that the news he had received was that the missing sister of the next wife of the Kuchiki family, who the Kuchiki family had been looking for, was Rukia. Aizen did not choose to continue listening and left again with peace of mind. Lin Yu also breathed a sigh of relief. After digesting a lot of news, Lucia had mixed feelings in her heart. Since she chose to abandon me, why is she looking for me now? Wouldn't it be better to just treat me as dead? Byakuya continued to explain. Rukia, Hyjin didn't mean to leave you behind. She is different from you. Hyjin was born in Seoul Society as a spiritual body with no spiritual power. He is just an ordinary soul. You should know what this means. What are you wearing? After Byakuya's constant explanations, Rukia gradually accepted this fact. So how is she doing now? Rukia looked at Byakuya Kuchiki with complicated eyes and her voice trembled slightly. Although there was a strong emotion deep in her heart, she still could not easily say the word, sister. Years of wandering and loneliness have made her feel strange and confused about this sudden family relationship. Byakuya Kuchiki was silent for a moment, his eyes flashed with pain. Lucia's heart sank, and she couldn't help but think about the worst. An ordinary soul living in a place like Seraiti would probably have disappeared long ago. And the person who came to look for her was not the sister she expected, but Byakuya Kuchiki. Thinking of this, Lucia's face showed unconcealable sadness. Byakuya Kuchiki realized that Rukia might have misunderstood what he meant, and hurriedly explained, Hijin is still alive, she is not dead. How is that possible? Rukia's eyes widened. Through studying at the Junnu Spiritual Arts Academy, she clearly understood that the soul will come to soul society after death. Those with spiritual power can become Shinigami through systematic learning. Those without spiritual power are called Jung, which are ordinary souls that can only wait for dissipation and reincarnation. But in Seraiti, it will only accelerate the death of ordinary souls. Didn't Byakuya just say that his sister was just an ordinary soul? How come she hasn't died yet? Feijun is indeed not dead. These things cannot be explained for a while. Rukia looked at Byakuya in front of her, filled with confusion. She didn't understand why her sister was still alive, still in the Kuchiki family, and became the wife of this Shinigami. She wants to know the truth but is afraid to face reality. Byakuya looked at Rukia quietly, knowing her inner struggle and confusion. He sighed softly and said, "Rukia, come with me back to Kuchiki's house. Some things can only be truly understood when you return to Kuchiki's house." Lucia hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. She decided to trust Byakuya for once and followed him back to Kuchiki's house to hear Hyjin's story. Perhaps, there is a secret in this that she has never known. The Abarai and others next to them were confused. They didn't know what this Shinigami said to Rukia. She looked dazed, with tears in the corners of her eyes. When the two of them were leaving together, Abarai jumped out to stop him. "Why did you take Lucia away? You must make it clear." Lin Yu stopped Abarai Renji. "This is a family matter of the Kuchiki family, not something you can decide." Byakuya turned and walked forward, Rukia silently following behind him. Their figures gradually faded away, leaving Abarai and others looking at their departing figures with blank expressions. Abarai couldn't help but ask, "Captain Lin Yu, what did that Shinigami say to Rukia? Why did she suddenly become so depressed?" Lin Yu looked at a few people and replied, "This matter is a family matter of the Kuchiki family. If you want to know, just wait until Lucia comes back and hear her tell you the answer personally." Kuchiki's family affairs. Abarai gritted his teeth, feeling worried. He was worried that Rukia would be harmed, but he couldn't stop Byakuya from taking her away. At this moment, he could only pray silently that Lucia would be safe. In the Kuchiki family, a story about family secrets and family love is about to unfold. Can Lucia accept this sudden fact? Is she willing to recognize Feijun as her sister? Everything is full of unknowns. The two went to Kuchiki's house together. Along the way, Lucia was filled with anxiety and expectation. When they arrived at Kuchiki's house, a beautiful and gentle woman was writing something in the courtyard. Her eyes revealed kindness and warmth, and Lucia recognized her at a glance, Feijun. Because the two of them are so similar, and they have that kind of innate affection in their blood. Before Byakuya could speak, Rukia asked, "Are you my sister, Hyjin?" When Feijun heard this, she was immersed in writing and paused. She couldn't believe that she was hallucinating because of longing, as if she heard Lucia's voice. She slowly turned her head. "Rukia." Feijun called her sister's name softly, with tears in her eyes. She saw the figure she thought about day and night. Feijun pinched herself hard, it hurt. This is not an illusion, Lucia has really found it. Lucia stared at Feijun, tears falling down involuntarily. On the way, Lucia was still considering whether to recognize each other, but at this time, the two hugged each other and cried, feeling the lost and regained family affection. Rukia and Hiyashi hugged each other and cried. Byakuya watched the scene quietly, with a trace of relief in his eyes. After the two people's emotions stabilized a little, Lucia asked, "Sister, why are you here? What happened back then?" Feijun took a deep breath and slowly recounted what happened that year. It turns out that as an ordinary soul, Feijun cannot stay in Seraiti. She regretted after abandoning Rukia, so she started looking for Rukia everywhere in Rukongai. On the way, she once met Byakuya who came to Rukongai to perform a mission. Perhaps it was love at first sight. Byakuya put aside his pride as a noble, chatted with her for a few words and then left. In the days that followed, Byakuya always took the opportunity to chat with her during missions. Until one day, Byakuya confessed his love to her and revealed that he was a noble of the Soul Society and the next head of the Kuchiki family. It didn't take long for the two people who fell in love to discuss marriage. In the end, despite the pressure from the family, Byakuya married Hyjin. After marriage, Hijin's health deteriorated, and he almost passed away some time ago. In the end, thanks to the treatment of Lin Yu and Niryuri, he saved his life and became a Shinigami. After listening to Feijun's story, Lucia had mixed feelings in her heart. No wonder there were fluctuations in spiritual pressure on Hijin when I saw him just now. Although she is not powerful, she is still a Shinigami. Lucia is very grateful to the Kuchiki family, Lin Yu and others for saving her sister's life. At the same time, she also has a better understanding of her own life experience. At this time, Byakuya stepped forward, handed Rukia a token, and said, "This is a token of the Kuchiki family members. It represents the honor and responsibility of the Kuchiki family. Now, I will give it to you. I hope you can become part of the Kuchiki family." Lucia thought for a while, took the token, and felt its heavy weight. She knows that this is not only an honor, but also a responsibility. From then on, she became a member of the Kuchiki family. The scene where the sisters recognize each other is always touching. In the evening, Byakuya and Hijin held a small welcome ceremony for Rukia. The two invited his grandfather Kuchiki Ginling. At Byakuya's plea, Ginling also recognized Rukia's identity. After all, Rukia is also a talented Shinigami who can also strengthen the Kuchiki family. Starting tonight, Rukia has a last name, Kuchiki. Captain, the chief captain invites you to visit the first team. Tetsuziman conveyed the order of the first team. Lin Yu was a little surprised when he heard the news. After all, Master Shan hasn't looked for him for a long time. Is there something important that needs him to deal with in person? Or does Shan Yi just want to chat with him about life and have a cup of tea together? Of course, this possibility is extremely small. Based on Lin Yu's understanding of Shan Yi, he is not the kind of person who likes to chat. Lin Yu did not dare to neglect and immediately set off to the first team building. Along the way, he was thinking about possible situations, but he still couldn't guess what happened. When he finally arrived at his destination, he found that not only Captain Yamamoto was here, but also a busty girl. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Matsumoto Rengoku, Shiba Isshin's vice captain. Isn't this Shiba Isshin's vice captain Matsumoto Rengoku? Why is she here? Lin Yu muttered in his heart, with a trace of doubt on his face. He really couldn't figure out why Matsumoto Rengoku appeared here, and it seemed to have some connection with Captain Yamamoto. At this moment, he was completely confused and could only wait quietly for Captain Yamamoto to explain everything. The captain didn't waste any words. "Here you are. This is Shiba Isshin's vice captain of the 10th Division, Matsumoto Rengoku." Captain Lin Yu. Matsumoto Rengoku saluted quickly. The captain continued to speak. "This time the 10th Division encountered a difficult problem and I couldn't solve it, so I asked Rangju to come to me. I am going to send you to assist the 10th Division to deal with it. The specific situation is still Deputy Rangju. Captain, please explain." After saying that, he looked at Rengoku. The captain asked Matsumoto Rengoku to tell him the reason for the incident, and Rengoku immediately said, "Some time ago, when I went to Rukongai on a mission, I accidentally discovered a genius boy. His whole body exuded an extremely cold aura, and the surroundings were covered with ice. Frost, and this ability was not created by the young man actively, but was caused by the spiritual pressure leaking out of him without his control." Quote. The captain nodded and took over the words. "After the 10th Division reported the report, I went to the Great Spirit Book Corridor to check the relevant records. I can confirm that this boy is the strongest Zanpakuto of the ice system in Soul Society, Hyorin. The owner of the pill. Hyorinmaru." Hearing this, Lin Yu pretended to be surprised. Has Hitsugaya Toshiro been discovered? The strongest Zanpakuto of the ice system, Hitsugaya did not fully master this sword in the end, and his performance was unsatisfactory. He frowned and asked doubtfully, "Then why didn't this young man be brought back to Seraiti to train him properly? After all, such talents are very rare." Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni replied, "Shiba Isshin and Matsumoto Rengoku have gone to persuade him many times, but the boy has always been unwilling to join the Gotei 13 because he needs to take care of his elderly grandmother." Lin Yu quickly waved his hand to refuse. "Captain, you don't want me to persuade this young man, do you?" "I don't think I have the ability to persuade him." Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni nodded. expressing his understanding of Lin Yu's concerns, and then explained, yes, the main purpose of sending you is not just to persuade. If this boy is really unwilling to join the Gote 13, I hope you can temporarily seal his ability. If this powerful power falls into the hands of someone with ulterior motives, the consequences will be disastrous. I understand, then let me go with Rangju. Lin Yu stood up, pulled Rangju and prepared to go to Rukongai. Along the way, Rangju didn't speak, because it was the first time she saw Lin Yu and she didn't know the captain's temper at all. Lin Yu, who was on his way, couldn't stand the dull atmosphere. He remembered that Rangju was also an alcoholic, so he took out his own small wine bottle and said, Rangju, do you drink? Rangaku spoke a little cautiously, as Captain Lin Yu also a member of the wine shop. Lin Yu opened the stopper of the wine bottle and handed it to Rangju, try it. This is good wine. Smelling the rich aroma of wine, Rangaku's nature as a drunkard was revealed. Without any of the restraint before, he immediately took the jug from Lin Yu and took a sip. Rangju's face turned red and she praised her profusely, what a good wine. Lin Yu smiled slightly and looked at her, thinking, she is indeed a woman who is addicted to alcohol. The two drank and chatted, and soon arrived at Rukongai. This is it, Rangaku said, pointing to a dilapidated wooden house not far ahead. I saw that the surroundings of the wooden house were covered with frost, and there were bursts of cold air. Rangaku stepped forward and knocked lightly on the door. The door opened a crack, and a young man with cold eyes appeared at the door. There was a hint of impatience on his face, as if he didn't welcome the people outside the door. Why is it you, this woman again? I said I would not join the Gote 13, the young man said disgustedly, his tone full of disdain. Rangaku smiled helplessly. She knew that this boy had deep feelings against the Gote 13, but she had no intention of giving up persuasion. At this moment, Lin Yu stepped forward and interrupted the conversation between the two. He showed a warm smile and said, little brat, can you let us come in and talk? This is not the way to treat guests. The young man frowned, a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. But after a moment of silence, he finally opened the door and let Lin Yu and Rangju enter the house. There was an old smell filling the cabin, and the walls were slightly yellowed, obviously having experienced the baptism of time. There are not many furnishings in the house, just a simple bed, a table and a few chairs. In addition to Toshiro, there was an old woman shivering with cold in the room. She huddled next to the stove, trying to find some warmth from the weak heat. However, the temperature of the stove was insignificant against such a degree of cold. Lin Yu looked around and his eyes fell on the old woman. He walked up to the old woman and asked with concern, old woman, are you okay? The old woman said with a trembling voice, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Lin Yu looked at Toshiro, little brat, what's your name? Is this cold caused by you? When Toshiro saw that this man didn't ask him to go to the Gote 13 as soon as he opened his mouth, but instead cared about his grandmother, his good impression in his heart also increased a bit. My name is Hitsugaya Toshiro. One day in my sleep, I saw an ice dragon asking me to call his name with a deafening voice. But I didn't know what to do, and then my body began to radiate cold air. It became like this. Hitsugaya's voice became smaller and smaller. It was for this reason that his grandmother became like this. Lin Yu turned his head and said to Toshiro, before, you kept saying that you wanted to take care of your grandmother, but it was because you didn't know how to control your spiritual power that you made your grandmother suffer like this. If I'm not wrong, the cold is getting more intense day by day. Toshiro bit his lip and said nothing. Lin Yu continued, if you continue like this, your grandmother's life will be endangered. Is this what you call protection? By joining the Gote 13, your life and your grandmother's life will be improved, and your abilities will also be improved. How about it be put to better use? Toshiro was still silent, but there seemed to be more thinking in his eyes. Lin Yu saw his hesitation and decided to give him some more time. Okay, I won't force you. However, I will take some measures regarding your abilities. Let me put a seal on you first to prevent your spiritual power from getting out of control. But my seal will not last long. When the seal is broken, your spiritual power will burst out, and then you and your grandmother will have no choice but to die. As he said that, Lin Yu attached his Zanpakuto to Toshiro. Seal the demon. Z-Wei. A ray of starlight shot out from Lin Yu's knife and enveloped Dong Shilang. He felt that his spiritual power was suppressed, and the surrounding frost gradually dissipated. Thank you, Toshiro whispered. You're welcome. I believe you will make the right choice. Lin Yu smiled and patted the boy on the shoulder. We will come again. Then, he and Rangaku left the hut, leaving Toshiro and his grandmother in quiet Rukongai. Captain Lin Yu. On the way back to Seraiti, Rangaku looked like he was hesitant to speak. It seemed that he had something to say but didn't know how to say it. Lin Yu looked at her, raised the corner of his mouth slightly, showed a smile, and said softly, "Don't worry, let's talk slowly after we return to Seraiti." He knew that Ranju must have something to ask, but now it's not the right time yet, so let her be patient for a while. When Ranju heard Lin Yu's words, although she felt a little confused and anxious, she still nodded and agreed. After all, Lin Yu is the captain, so what he says naturally makes sense. And she also believed that Captain Lin Yu would tell her the truth when the time was right. Finally, they returned to Seraiti. Rangju followed Lin Yu to the captain's room of the 7th team. As soon as she entered the door, Rangaku noticed a set of drinking utensils placed in the room. She looked at these drinking utensils carefully, and the more she looked at them, the more familiar they became, as if she had seen them somewhere. But for a while, I couldn't remember where I had seen it. Seeing Rangaku staring at the drinking utensils curiously, Lin Yu smiled and explained, "Does this drinking utensil look familiar? I got it from the captain of the Kyoband of the 8th Division." His tone was relaxed and humorous, with a hint of humor. With a hint of ridicule. After hearing Lin Yu's words, Rangju suddenly realized. It turns out that these drinking utensils came from the leader of the Beijing band. No wonder they look so familiar. It seems that Captain Lin Yu is not an old-fashioned person, he can do things like smooth drinking utensils. Thinking of this, Rangaku couldn't help but laugh, and her mood became much more relaxed. Lin Yu poured a glass for Rangju. "What did you want to ask at Rukongai just now? Tell me." Rangaku took a sip of wine and said, "Captain Lin Yu, just now you told Toshiro that your seal can't last too long, or it will be broken soon, endangering his and his grandmother's lives. As the Gotei 13 captain of the team, you should be able to suppress his spiritual pressure permanently." Ha ha. Lin Yu smiled and said, "Rangju, do you still remember what our main purpose is?" "Of course I'm persuading Toshiro to join the Gotei 13. Rangaku got to the point, and then slapped his forehead. "I understand, Captain Lin Yu, you did it on purpose, so we can invite him next time the difficulty has been reduced a lot." "That's right." Lin Yu nodded slightly. "If he doesn't want to join, we can't force him. This can not only put some pressure on him, but also let him feel our sincerity. After all, we really want him to be a part of us." Rangaku sighed, "But wouldn't this be too cruel? If he fails to make a decision in time, wouldn't it harm him and his grandmother?" Lin Yu said easily, "That's not true. I still know how long my seal will last, so we just need to go there on time. But during this period, you should pay more attention to Toshiro's situation. If you find anything unusual, please notify me immediately." "I understand, Captain Lin Yu." Rangju nodded solemnly. Lin Yu picked up the wine glass and drank it all in one gulp. "I believe he will make a wise choice." A few days later, Lin Yu and Rangju came to Toshiro's home again. This time, they saw a calmer version of him. "I've thought about it." Toshiro looked directly into Lin Yu's eyes. "I want to join the Gotei 13. Lin Yu smiled and nodded. "Welcome to join." Toshiro took a deep breath. "But I have a condition, I want to bring my grandmother with me." Lin Yu thought for a moment. "I'm afraid this won't work. Seraiti is a land of heavy spirits and is not suitable for ordinary souls to live." "Then can you let my grandmother live nearby?" Toshiro said quickly. "I can go back to visit her every day." Lin Yu looked at the young man in front of him. He was really a filial child. "This is no problem. I will try my best to arrange it." On this day, the sun was shining brightly, and Lin Yu came to Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy with Toshiro, who looked puzzled. "Uncle, don't you want me to join the Gotei 13? Why did you bring me to this place?" Toshiro asked curiously. Lin Yu's face suddenly turned gloomy when he heard Toshiro's name. "Don't call me uncle, call me Captain Lin Yu." He glared at Toshiro fiercely, as if he wanted to let him understand his identity with his eyes. Toshiro was so frightened that he shrank his neck, but he couldn't help but muttered, "But you look like an uncle." Lin Yu sighed helplessly, and then explained, "This is the Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy, a school that all Shinigami need to go through. Here, you can learn how to control the spiritual pressure, and master the Zon Fist and Walking Ghost that Shinigami must master. Only through systematic study can you become a truly qualified Shinigami." After hearing Lin Yu's words, Toshiro's eyes shone with excitement. "So that's it, let's go in quickly." After saying that, he couldn't wait to walk towards the academy. Lin Yu looked at Dong Shilang's back and shook his head helplessly. This guy is really impatient. The school start time for Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy has long passed, but for Lin Yu, as long as he sends people here, school will start any day. "Xiaobai, why are you here?" Lin Yu didn't expect to meet an acquaintance when he came here today. Hinamori Dao immediately ran over to say hello after seeing Toshiro. "Bedwetting Momoko, you're here too." Toshiro responded unceremoniously. "I almost forgot that they both live in Inazuri district, so they must know each other. Did you also come to the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy to study? Didn't you say that you didn't want to be a Shinigami and just wanted to take care of your grandmother with peace of mind?" Hinamori Momo was very curious as to why she saw Toshiro here. Toshiro replied helplessly, "My Reiatsu is getting more and more out of control. If this continues, my grandmother and I will both die, so I have no choice but to come here." Hearing the news, Hinamori Momo was a little surprised. "Xiaobai, has your spiritual pressure reached this level?" Toshiro nodded and asked curiously, "Bedwetting Momo, how long have you been coming to the Spiritual Arts Academy?" Hinamori Dao's face was filled with a bright smile, and she said softly, "I have been born for the third time now. Xiaobai, you have to call me senior sister." After hearing this, Toshiro couldn't help but frown, looked at Hinamori Momo carefully, and then said with a wicked smile, "Oh, I won't call you senpai, Bedwetting Momo." When Hinamori Dao heard this, her face instantly turned red, and she stamped her feet in embarrassment. "You, Xiaobai, you are so annoying." She scolded and chased the winter lion. Lang. The two of them were laughing and joking for a while, and then Hinata realized that Lin Yu was also present. She felt a little embarrassed and quickly apologized to him. "Ah. Captain Lin Yu, I didn't notice you just now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Lin Yu smiled slightly and said he didn't care. "It doesn't matter, I'm just sending Toshiro to school." Hinamori Momo showed a timid expression and asked cautiously, "But it seems that the start time of the academy has passed, right?" Lin Yu replied confidently, "Don't worry, I'm the captain. This little thing is not a problem for me." At this moment, a teacher walked over slowly and greeted Lin Yu politely. "Captain Lin Yu, is this the genius boy you brought?" "Yes, his name is Hitsugaya Toshiro. He is a genius. He already knows the name of his Zanpakuto, but he just doesn't know how to use it." Hinamori Momo and the teacher were startled. They looked at each other and said in surprise, "You know the name of the Zanpakuto before you even learn it. Such a genius is destined to become the captain in the future. Xiaobai, you are so powerful. I don't even know the name of the Zanpakuto yet, and you have reached this level." Momo Hinamori looked at Toshiro in surprise. Toshiro scratched his head in embarrassment. "Hey, he's not that powerful anymore." The teacher from the Spiritual Arts Institute calmed down and said to Toshiro with a smile, "Let's go, kid, let's test your spiritual pressure first." "Momo Hinamori, do you want to go and see how powerful Xiaobai's spiritual pressure is?" Lin Yu wanted to see Toshiro's potential, so he asked Momo Hinamori. Hinamori Dao immediately agreed, "Of course, I also want to know how strong Xiaobai is." Toshiro nodded. Lin Yu and Hinamori Dao also followed the teacher into a spacious room. There is a huge machine in the center of the room, which displays various data and charts. The teacher pointed at the machine and explained, "This machine can measure your spiritual pressure strength. Just stand here and let it scan." Toshiro took a deep breath, walked to the machine, closed his eyes, and concentrated. Is this instrument broken? Why is there no movement?" The teacher's face was filled with questions. Lin Yu was also stunned for a moment. "I almost forgot that Xiaobai's spiritual pressure was sealed by me. I will unseal him immediately." As Lin Yu lifted the seal on Toshiro, his spiritual pressure began to escape involuntarily, accompanied by bursts of cold air. After a while, the machine made a buzzing sound, and the data on the screen began to jump rapidly. Finally, an astonishing number appeared on the screen. The teacher and Hinamori Momo opened their eyes wide. Looking at that number, they couldn't believe their eyes. This value is actually so high. The teacher murmured to himself, his eyes filled with wonder. Hinamori Momo jumped up with excitement. Wow, Xiaobai, you are really amazing. Toshiro opened his eyes, saw their reactions, and asked with some confusion, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with my Reiatsu? The teacher came back to his senses, smiled and shook his head. No, your spiritual pressure is very powerful, and it is as strong as the 5th level even before you start learning. It seems that you are indeed a rare genius. When Toshiro heard the teacher's praise, a shy smile appeared on his face. Then, the teacher took Toshiro to do some other tests, including spiritual power control, swordsmanship skills, etc. After each test, the teacher will speak highly of Toshiro's performance and say that he has extremely high talents in these areas. Finally, the teacher patted Toshiro on the shoulder and encouraged, work hard, Toshiro. With your talent and potential, your name will definitely be spread in the Soul Society. Hinamori Momo looked on with envy in her eyes. Lin Yu nodded with satisfaction. Toshiro is destined to become a captain-level existence. It depends on him which echelon he can reach the captain level. After the test, Toshiro and Hinamori Momo left the testing room together. Along the way, Hinamori Momo excitedly communicated with Toshiro and planned in advance for his future achievements. Xiaobai, you will definitely become a great Shinigami in the future. Have you decided which division you will join after graduation? Hinamori Momo said with confidence, clenching her hands into fists. Toshiro was a little speechless at this time. He only knew the names of the Gote 13, but didn't know the specific situation at all. Hinamori Momo looked at Toshiro's embarrassed look, and finally regained some face, and said proudly, you don't know this, right? I will give you a good introduction to the basic situation of each division. Hinamori Momo told Toshiro a lot, and he finally had a general understanding of the Gote 13th team. But you were brought here by Captain Lin Yu. You should go to the 7th team after graduation, right? Lin Yu didn't want Toshiro to come to the 7th division. Momo Hinamori, you misunderstood. I just brought Xiaobai to the Spiritual Arts Academy. It was Captain Shiba and Deputy Captain Rengoku of the 10th division who discovered his talent. He graduated. He will definitely be assigned to the 10th division. Will I go to the 10th division? That decadent-looking man and the big-breasted woman who loves to drink are the captain and vice-captain of the 10th division. It seems that Toshiro has a crush on Isshin and Rengoku. It's a very bad impression. Can I not go to the 10th division? Toshiro didn't want to face those two guys. Lin Yu began to coax Dongshiro again. No. Xiaobai, this is something that the captain has already decided. Okay then. Toshiro responded helplessly. Xiaobai, cheer up. From today on, you will be a student of Junyang Spiritual Arts Academy. I hope you graduate as soon as possible. Lin Yu said solemnly to Toshiro. Toshiro felt Lin Yu's expectations, and his eyes became firm. I will not let down Captain Lin Yu's expectations. Toshiro straightened his body. This day Kuchiki Shanghai came to Lin Yu with a pot of good wine. Master, long time no see, I'm here to have a drink and chat with you today. Kuchiki Shanghai said with a smile. Okay, I just want to find someone to have a drink with. Lin Yu responded with a smile. The two of them were sitting in the courtyard, drinking and chatting. Suddenly, Kuchiki Shanghai said, by the way, Master, I have something to discuss with you. Oh, what's the matter? Lin Yu asked curiously. That's it, I plan to send Rukia to your 7th division. Kuchiki Shanghai said. What are you talking about? You want to send Lucia to our 7th division. Lin Yu was so surprised that he almost spit out his wine. No, absolutely not. Why not? Kuchiki Shanghai asked doubtfully. Look at the current staffing of our 7th division. The vice captain is Tetsuziman, who sleeps all day long. The 3rd seat is Hiyori, who has a very hot temper. The 4th seat is Itsuzawaji Robo, he smiles all the time and is not very reliable. The 5th seat is Komamura from the left. Although he is good, his character is too serious, plus my wife who is not a seat officer, and Saito, a crazy woman. The environment is not suitable for Lucia's growth, so we should change to another division. Lin Yu explained. That's true. Well, I will reconsider Rukia's place. However, since you think Rukia is not suitable for the 7th team, where do you think it is more suitable for her to go? Kuchiki Shanghai asked Road. Well, let me think about it. Rukia's talent is very good, and she has a kind heart. Maybe she can go to the 13th or 4th division. The atmosphere there is relatively good. It's easier and more conducive to her growth. Lin Yu replied after thinking for a moment. Okay, then I'll listen to you. I will discuss with the other captains to see if Rukia can be assigned to the 13th or 4th division. Kuchiki Shanghai nodded. Well, this is best. I hope Lucia can develop better in these teams. Lin Yu said. Master, actually I have another idea. Kuchiki Shanghai said suddenly. Oh, what do you think? Lin Yu asked curiously. I want Rukia to learn swordsmanship from you. After all, your swordsmanship is very powerful. Kuchiki Shanghai said. So your boy is waiting for me here. Lin Yu suddenly realized. However, Lucia's kendo talent is a bit weak, so I can't guarantee that I can teach her to become a kendo master. That's okay. I believe that with your guidance, Lucia will not be any worse no matter how bad she is. I would like to thank you for Lucia in advance. Kuchiki Shanghai laughed happily. You kid, I would have known better not to drink this meal of yours. However, I can teach her, but she must pass my test. Lin Yu said. What test? Kuchiki Shanghai asked nervously. It's very simple, as long as she can be like you before, but she has to draw the sword 2,000 times a day. Lin Yu said lightly. Isn't this condition too harsh? Kuchiki Shanghai's eyes widened. Shanghai, if you have poor talent in swordsmanship, only hard work can make up for your weakness. If you can't do this, I won't teach her. I don't want to ruin my own brand. Lin Yu said seriously. Okay, I'll go back and talk to her. Kuchiki nodded helplessly. Lin Yu looked at Kuchiki Shanghai's leaving figure and thought to himself, I hope Lucia can retreat. I really don't want to teach my disciples anymore. This is a troublesome thing. A few days later, Kuchiki Shanghai came to Lin Yu's residence again. Master, Rukia agreed. Kuchiki Shanghai said. What? Did she really agree? Lin Yu asked in surprise. Yeah, Rukia said she wanted to become stronger. A trace of pride flashed in Kuchiki's eyes. Lin Yu was silent for a while. Well, since she is so determined, I will teach her swordsmanship for the time being. However, I have to say something ugly up front. If she gives up halfway, I will not be merciful. Don't worry, Master, I understand Lucia's character. Once she decides on something, she will go all out. Kuchiki Shanghai said with confidence. I hope so. Lin Yu thought to himself, I will have headaches in the future. In the early morning of the next day, the sun was shining brightly and the air was fresh. Shanghai took Lucia to the door of Lin Yu's mansion early. Shanghai knocked lightly on the door, and soon the door was opened. You are here, come in and sit down. Lin Yu said with a smile. The two walked into the house. After Lin Yu asked them to sit down, his eyes fell on Lucia. He asked softly, Lucia, Shanghai should have told you all my requests, right? A determined look appeared on Lucia's young face. She nodded vigorously and said, Uncle has made it clear to me that I am willing to accept your conditions, teacher. When Lin Yu heard this, his heart tightened. He waved his hand quickly and said, Stop, stop. I have no intention of accepting you as my apprentice, I just want to teach you some swordsmanship skills. Lucia blinked her big bright eyes and looked at Lin Yu doubtfully, seeming a little confused as to why Lin Yu said this. Shanghai laughed on the side. He understood that Lin Yu had extremely high confidence in his own strength and did not need to prove anything by recruiting disciples. At the same time, Shanghai also knew that Lin Yu was very serious and responsible about teaching students. He would not accept a student easily, but once he decided, he would do his best to train this student. Lin Yu looked at Lucia's innocent look and couldn't help laughing. He thought to himself that this child was really cute, but now that she had agreed to the conditions, formal training would begin next. Shanghai saw that Lin Yu had agreed, then I'll go back first and leave Lucia to you. Come with me. After saying this, Lin Yu took Lucia to the training ground. Lin Yu decided to start with holding a knife as he had taught Shanghai before. He stood with a knife in hand and immediately blended into the surrounding environment. Follow me and don't ask why. Oh, Lucia was a little confused. Didn't she say she wanted to practice drawing the sword? But she still held the sword in a decent manner and learned Lin Yu's movements. Well, just don't move and hold on for an hour. Oh, I know. As time passed by, sweat gradually formed on Lucia's forehead and her arms began to tremble slightly. She gritted her teeth and tried to maintain her posture. An hour finally passed, and Lin Yu said, "Okay, you can put down the knife and take a rest." Lucia put down the knife with relief and rubbed her sore shoulders. "How do you feel?" Lin Yu asked. Lucia took a deep breath and replied, "A little tired, but I can still persist." Lin Yu put his zanpakudo against Lucia's body. "The stars protect you." Ziwei. Rukia's fatigue disappeared instantly. "Hey, teacher, your zanpakudo's ability is so easy to use." Lin Yu nodded with satisfaction. "I said before that my zanpakudo is an auxiliary type. Isn't it normal to have this kind of ability? Then we will change positions and continue practicing, which will still take an hour." He picked up his zanpakudo and changed his sword-holding posture. "Remember the movements and continue practicing." Lucia started the arduous practice of holding a knife again. Although her movements were a little unfamiliar, her attitude was very serious. Another hour passed, and Lin Yu added buff to Lucia again. "Learn these 2 knife-holding postures today and practice them repeatedly." Lin Yu gave today's practice goals. As the sun set, Lin Yu said, "That's it for today's training. We will continue tomorrow." Lucia let out a long sigh, finally ending her tiring day. Under Shanghai's careful arrangements, Lucia hesitated between the 4th Division and the 13th Division, but finally chose to join the 13th Division. Despite this, she often runs both ways. On weekdays, she stays in the 13th Division. Once she is free, she will come to the 7th Division to receive Lin Yu's guidance. However, Lucia's progress is not fast. Especially when it comes to slaying fists and moving ghosts, what she is least good at is swordsmanship. This made Lin Yu feel a little helpless. After all, when he taught Shanghai, it only took Shanghai a few days to master the essence of holding a knife, but it took Lucia a full month to learn it. On this day, Lucia came to the 7th team to train with Lin Yu as usual. She stood in front of Lin Yu with a serious expression. After a period of hard work, she has mastered the skill of holding a knife and has made significant progress in this area. Now, she no longer needs to practice holding a knife repeatedly, but is ready to move to a higher level of training. Lin Yu looked at Lucia, a trace of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. He knew that Lucia was ready, so he said, "I won't practice holding a knife today. You can enter the next stage." Hearing this, Lucia breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she also felt a surge of expectation. She felt that she had finally gotten rid of the tedious knife-holding exercises and was about to face a new challenge. However, she didn't know that the real nightmare had just begun. Lucia asked curiously, "The next stage? Do you want to practice drawing the sword?" Lin Yu nodded and replied calmly, "Yes, starting from today, we will start practicing drawing the sword. Remember what I asked you before, draw the sword 2,000 times." When Lucia thought of this, her face was filled with a bitter expression, regretting that she was young and ignorant and agreed to this request. She originally thought that drawing the sword 2,000 times was no big deal. After practicing holding the sword, she realized that the reality was completely different from what she thought. But now that she had reached this point, she didn't want to give up easily. Lin Yu followed the example and demonstrated once, and Lucia began to practice in a decent manner. Lucia gritted her teeth and drew the knife again and again. Her arms gradually became sore and weak, but she still persisted. Time passed slowly as she drew the knife again and again. 1999, 2000. Lucia finally completed the goal of drawing the sword 2,000 times. She was breathing heavily and her clothes were soaked with sweat. Lin Yu looked at her and nodded, "Yes, just practice like this." On this day, Lucia was practicing drawing a sword alone. Lin Yu came over and handed her a knife. "Try this one." Lucia took the knife and felt a heavy power. "This is a special training knife, which is heavier than ordinary knives." Lin Yu explained, "Practice with it will be more effective." Rukia tightened her grip on the handle of the knife and pulled out the knife with all her strength. The feeling this time was completely different. The weight of the blade made her movements more difficult, but also more realistic. She drew the sword again and again, feeling the inertia of the blade and the flow of power. As time went by, her movements became smoother and more natural. Lin Yu looked on with a satisfied smile. "Rukia, you have made rapid progress," he said, "but it is not enough. In a real battle, the enemy will not give you many opportunities to draw the sword. You must be able to draw the sword quickly under any circumstances. Give the enemy a fatal blow." A month passed by in a hurry. Lin Yu began to increase the difficulty of the practice again. "Lukia, the next step is the more difficult part, drawing the sword while moving. You have to draw the sword quickly and accurately to attack while constantly changing positions." After hearing this, Lucia complained in her heart, but she still mustered up the courage to try it. At first, her movements were clumsy and slow, but with constant practice, she gradually found the feeling. Time flies, and another month has passed in the blink of an eye. Lucia's sword drawing skills are becoming more and more adept, and she can even draw her sword and hit the target instantly while moving at high speed. "Lukia, you have done a good job." Lin Yu's voice came. "Now, you can try to integrate the sword into the battle." After several months of Lin Yu's simple and rude teachings, Lucia's swordsmanship finally rose to a higher level. However, her talent for swordsmanship is too poor. If she wants to reach Xianghei's level, she has to persevere day and night. After finishing today's practice, Lin Yu looked at the panting Lucia in front of him and said, "Lucia, you don't have to come to the 7th team from tomorrow on." Hearing this, Lucia's eyes widened immediately. She tilted her head and asked doubtfully, "Why don't you come?" Lin Yu smiled slightly and explained, "I have already taught you everything about swordsmanship, and the rest is up to you. Moreover, you also need some time to digest and practice these skills." Lucia suddenly understood and nodded, but suddenly felt a sense of relief in her heart. Months of intense swordsmanship practice were a huge torture for her. Now she can finally breathe a little easier, and this feeling makes her feel more relaxed. Lucia bowed deeply to Lin Yu and said, "Thank you for your teaching, Master." Lin Yu quickly waved his hand and said, "Hey, stop it, I told you that I don't regard you as a disciple, I only give you swordsmanship instruction for Xianghei's sake." Lucia was stunned for a moment, but soon regained her smile and said, "Thank you for your guidance, teacher." She was a little confused. She didn't know why Lin Yu was so resistant to accepting apprentices, but since the other party didn't want to, if you want to be your own master, then just change your title. Anyway, as long as I can express my gratitude to him. After returning to Kuchiki's house, Rukia immediately went to find Xianghei. "Uncle, teacher Lin Yu's teaching to me has ended. I have a question to ask you. You tell me, why is Captain Lin Yu so resistant to me calling him master and not wanting to accept me as my apprentice? I think I'm not bad either." Kuchiki, Xianghei and Rukia talked about the past. "You are still far from becoming my master's disciple. In his eyes, you are not qualified. You know, when I became my master, I was what kind of strength?" Lucia shook her head. "I don't know." Xianghei's thoughts went back to the time when he became a disciple. That year, he was young and successful, and learned Bankai early, so he was arrogant. When he lost a bet with Lin Yu, he decided to become his disciple. At first he was dismissive, but in the end he was cruelly defeated by reality and was beaten by Lin Yu. Only then did he understand that there are mountains outside the mountains and people outside the mountains. After hearing Xianghei's memories, Lucia's eyes almost popped out of her head. Captain-level uncle, being hanged and beaten. When did the captain become so worthless? "Uncle, can you beat teacher Lin Yu now?" Lucia continued to ask. Xianghei shook his head and said, "Don't look at my master's laziness all day long. Over the years, I have become increasingly unclear about his strength. People of the older generation once said that he is second only to the captain. A strong man, now it seems that he may have already surpassed the captain." As he spoke, Xianghei's face straightened, and he said to Lucia very seriously, "You can't reveal what I'm going to say next to anyone. Remember, no matter who it is." Looking at Uncle Xianghei's serious expression, Lucia instantly realized that what she heard today was absolutely confidential. She couldn't help but sit upright and listen carefully to what her uncle was going to say next. "Rukia, do you know the division 1 belonged to?" Kuchiki Xianghei asked solemnly. Lucia nodded and replied, I know, uncle, you are the Special Forces captain of the first team, which is the main team. Kuchiki Shanghai continued. As the captain of the Special Forces, I usually perform confidential tasks, tasks that the criminal army is not qualified to get involved in. I have discovered some interesting things while performing tasks over the years. Lucia asked curiously. Uncle, please tell me. Kuchiki Shanghai suddenly talked about Lin Yu going to Mao Spiritual Arts Academy to show Rukia and the others the Zanpakuto ability. This surprised Rukia, but she still recalled the scene at that time seriously and said, I remember very clearly that teacher Lin Yu and Captain Aizen of the 5th Division released the Zanpakuto in the large classroom that day and introduced their abilities. His Zanpakuto is a star-type sword with auxiliary abilities. He also used this ability to bless me during training. After hearing what Lucia said, Shanghai sneered, Star System. Master really knows how to make up jokes. Rukia, in fact, Master's Zanpakuto is not a star type, but a regular type Zanpakuto with powerful attack power. All I know so far is that his sword can control the power of thunder and stars. Kuchiki Shanghai said solemnly. Lucia opened her mouth in surprise. She had no idea that Lin Yu's Zanpakuto was so powerful. But why does teacher Lin Yu hide the true ability of his Zanpakuto? Lucia asked in confusion. Kuchiki Shanghai was silent for a moment and said slowly, this may involve some high-level secrets, and I don't know the specific situation. However, since the master chooses to hide it, there must be his reasons. Lucia, you have to remember, don't trust others easily, even me or your teacher, my master. Lucia nodded, but there was a puzzled look on her face. She didn't know why Shanghai said that. Shanghai looked at Lucia's expression, smiled, and then explained, this is what I call interesting things. After Shanghai finished speaking, he suddenly recalled a piece of history about Lin Yu. As the captain of the special force, Shanghai often needs to go to the Great Spirit Book corridor to check some information. By chance, he curiously checked the collected information about Lin Yu, and unexpectedly discovered something shocking. According to the information in the Great Spirit Book corridor, Lin Yu took up the position of captain of the 7th Division more than 300 years ago, and his Zanpakuto does belong to the star system. This fact confused Shanghai, because according to common sense, this situation is almost impossible to happen. However, what is even more surprising is that the information in the Great Spirit Book corridor cannot be tampered with at will, and its existence has nothing to do with Shinigami's will. On the contrary, it is a tool that compulsorily collects and records all events and information about Soul Society from the beginning of its evolution to the present. Some even speculate that its operation may be based on the will of the Spirit King. Shanghai realized the seriousness of this problem. He suspected that he might have been plotted, which led to an error in his understanding of Lin Yu. So, he reported the matter to the captain and accompanied the captain to the Great Spiritual Book corridor to review relevant information. In the end, he discovered that the records the captain saw were exactly the same as what Shanghai had seen before. Not only that, the information of people around Lin Yu has also changed. This includes Shanghai's master's wife, Lutori Bianjai. According to the data, she had been killed in the battle with the Quincy 1,000 years ago. However, in reality, she not only lives well, but also stays in this world and leads a peaceful life. The same situation also happened to Saito Immortal, the first-generation captain of the 6th Division. According to the data, she was killed in that war, but she is still alive today, and she has also not returned to Soul Society in this world. This kind of thing is so bizarre that almost no one knows their true identity except the older generation and a few people who know them. When he and the captain discovered this shocking fact, they realized the seriousness of the matter and secretly discussed it many times with the captains who knew everything about Lin Yu. In the end, everyone reached a consensus and decided to keep the matter deep in their hearts and no one would mention it to the outside world. Because once it is leaked, it will inevitably cause an uproar and bring unpredictable consequences to Soul Society. Lucia looked at Shanghai's distracted look and reminded him, Uncle, what are you thinking about? Why did you stop talking all of a sudden? Shanghai's memory was interrupted by Lucia's words. He came back to his senses and said with a smile, It's nothing, I just thought of some things that Master had done before. Shanghai patted Lucia on the shoulder and said sincerely, So, Lucia, in this world, there are many things that are not what we see on the surface. We must remain vigilant and not be easily fooled by appearances. Quote. Rukia nodded, still curious in her heart why teacher Lin Yu wanted to hide his Zanpakuto's ability. Okay, just know this. Don't tell anyone, including your teammates. Shanghai ordered. I understand, uncle, Lucia agreed. Shanghai stood up and said, well, it's getting late. You should go back and rest. Lucia also stood up, saluted Shanghai, and then turned and left. Lucia was walking back to her room, still thinking about Shanghai's words in her mind. She felt that Shanghai was right. In this world, there were indeed many things that were not as simple as they seemed. She decided that she must be more cautious in the future and could no longer be as simple as before. At the same time, she also became more curious and doubtful about teacher Lin Yu's past. After returning to the room, Lucia lay on the bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The next morning, Rukia got up early and returned to the 13th Division. She wanted to go to Captain Jashiro to ask about Lin Yu, but the explanation she got was still the same as what Uncle Shanghai said. However, Lucia always felt that something was strange, but she couldn't explain why. She thought hard for a while, but still had no clue. Finally, she decided to put this matter aside and turned to find Shiba Kyan. Shiba Kyan has always taken good care of her as a junior. He is gentle and caring towards his wife Shiba. He respects and considerately assists Captain Jashiro. He is enthusiastic like a friend and takes care of his subordinates like a big brother. After she joined the 13th Division, he personally taught her various fighting methods and took special care of her. When Lucia is with him, she feels that life is full of sunshine and joy. Shiba Kyan is also her trusted senior. Rukia, although your swordsmanship level is already very high, you must also pay attention to your method when fighting. Just using swordsmanship will not work. You must learn to use Kido to contain your opponent. Shiba Kyan carefully taught Rukia how to fight while gesturing with the sword in his hand. Lucia nodded vigorously. She cherished this hard-won learning opportunity. Since she entered the 13th Division without going through the induction ceremony, the members of the 13th Division didn't treat her very well. Only Shiba Kyan and his wife Shiba cared about her very much. At this moment, a team member ran towards them in a panic, with tears on his face. Shiba Kyan frowned, looked at the crying team member with dissatisfaction, and shouted loudly, "What do you look like crying? If you have anything to do, just say it boldly." The team member choked and said, "Something happened, Shiba. Shiba's 3 seats are alive and dead." Upon hearing the news, Shiba Kyan shook his body as if struck by lightning. The trembling hand could no longer hold the Zanpakuto, and the knife fell to the ground. "This is impossible," he shouted. Nothing will happen to her." Lucia was also shocked. She grabbed the hem of the soldier's clothes and asked anxiously, "Is this true? What happened?" Shiba received a preliminary reconnaissance mission. Unexpectedly, she was attacked by a hollow of unknown origin. Her entire entourage was wiped out, and her life or death was unknown. The team member told the story with tears in his eyes. Shiba Kyan's eyes became dim. He picked up the knife on the ground, held it tightly in his hand, and murmured to himself, "You must stay alive." He looked at Rukia and said through gritted teeth, "Rukia, go and notify Captain Jashiro. I'll rush to the scene first." Lucia gritted her teeth and nodded. Something happened to Shiba's sister. How could that eldest sister who regarded herself as her biological sister? She put away her sad mood and immediately ran to the captain's room. "Captain Jashiro." Lucia hurriedly ran to Jashiro, but instead of greeting Jashiro as usual, she said directly, "Sister Shiba was attacked, and her life and death are unknown now." Her voice was filled with sadness, as if losing a loved one. Jashiro's face was pale, his brows were furrowed, and he had an expression of disbelief. He couldn't help coughing a few times, and then asked, "What's going on?" Ahem. His tone was full of worry and doubt. Lucia lowered her head, tears welling up in her eyes. She replied with a trembling voice, "It was just an ordinary reconnaissance mission. I don't know why such a thing happened." Jashiro felt a pang of regret. If he had insisted on not letting everyone lead the team there, maybe everything would be different now. However, regret cannot change the facts. "Does Kyan know about this?" Jashiro's voice was filled with worry. "Brother Kyan already knows. He has already rushed to the scene of the incident. Lucia wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and tried to calm down. Jashiro nodded slightly to express understanding. He knows that Kyan has deep feelings for Du, so he will go all out to investigate the truth. Rukia, gather the team members immediately, and we will rush over immediately. Jashiro ordered. Rukia looked at Captain Jashiro and asked with some worry, Captain Jashiro, is your health okay? Jashiro smiled, patted Lucia on the shoulder and said, it's okay, I can still hold on. Just as Jashiro Yukitake and others were preparing to go to the scene of the incident, Shiba Kyan returned to Division 13 with Shiba in his arms. Master Kyan, are you okay, Sister 2? Rukia asked anxiously. It's not life-threatening at the moment. He's just in a coma. Shiba Kyan shook his head and said to Rukia. After hearing the news, everyone was finally relieved. Shiba Kyan carefully placed Shiba in the team building to rest, and arranged for a team member to take care of her. However, just when they breathed a sigh of relief, a scream suddenly came from the team building. Jashiro and others were still discussing the incident, and immediately rushed into the team building after hearing the sound. I saw that the team member responsible for taking care of Shiba was dead, with a horrified expression on his face, pointing at Shiba on the bed. At this time, Shiba was actually exuding black spiritual pressure, and his whole body seemed to be swallowed by darkness, generally. What is going on? Lucia looked at the scene in front of her in surprise. Jashiro frowned. Is it the power of the void? The comatose Shiba didn't know when she woke up and killed the team member who took care of her. While Jashiro and others were stunned, Shiba killed several more team members one after another. Shiba Kyan also rushed over at this time. Seeing the situation at the scene, he rushed over crazily and hugged Shiba tightly. Du, what's wrong with you? With a ferocious expression on his face, Shiba broke free from Kyan's arms, then used Shunpo and disappeared in front of everyone in a few breaths. Shiba Kyan took the lead and chased out, followed closely by Jashiro and Rukia. Du, where are you? Shiba Kyan called his wife's name, but there was no answer in the dense forest. Shiba Kyan shouted loudly while searching, and suddenly stopped. He saw the fragments of Shiba's death armor and her Zanpakuto in a clearing, and at the same time felt the breath of hollow. Just then Jashiro and Rukia rushed over. Suya, who was in the darkness, did not hide and walked out openly. This is a crawling void, its head is covered with tentacle-like things, it has 6 hands, and the mask on its face has empty eyes. Shiba Kyan looked at the hollow in front of him. How many Shinigami have you swallowed? It was just a customary question, but I never thought that Taksu would actually answer it. Sorry, I can't remember how many Shinigami I swallowed. Jashiro and others were stunned for a moment. An ordinary hollow actually has its own consciousness and can speak. What is going on? Kyan continued. You're going to regret this. Regret? Why should I, Metastasia, regret? I also had my heart. I would only regret if I didn't devour Shinigami. It's just a pity that I didn't use that female Shinigami's body more just now. Shiba Kyan was filled with anger when he heard the words of the head. His eyes widened and he roared loudly, you deserve to die. At this time, Rukia was about to pull out her Zanpakuto, wanting to test the depth of this hollow. However, Shiba Kyan stretched out his hand to stop her. He turned his head, looked at Jashiro Yukitake firmly, and said in a serious tone, Captain, please let me take action personally. For my dignity, and for the dignity of the capital, I want to kill this hollow with my own hands. Jashiro Yukitake nodded in agreement. He knew Shiba Kyan's mood at the moment, and believed that he had the ability to kill this hollow. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.